Chapter 158. The road to God. John held a banquet in his residence and begged Ah to come. He claimed that he had finally learned how to cook, and wanted to let the Supreme General taste the delicacies he made himself. Ah could not imagine that John could cook, and went to the banquet curiously. At that time, there were only the three of them in the dining hall. Madanzo sat beside them and kept pouring wine for Ah. John sent all the servants away, and went into the kitchen after pouring a glass of wine for Ah. He busied himself for a long time, but no one knew what he was doing. After finishing the bottle of wine, Hardadef finally came in with a beautiful silver plate. There were 3 grilled fish on it. He placed the dish in front of the general and spoke respectfully. "Great General, please have a taste of my cooking." Ah put down the glass in his hand and stopped smiling. He looked at John without saying a word, but his eyes seemed to contain invisible pressure. Seeing that I was not eating, John patted his head and laughed. "Supreme General, are you worried that my cooking is not good? I made this fish myself in the Nile River. I tasted it just now and it tastes good." Then he picked up the knife, cut a piece of fish and ate it, even chewing the bones. At this time, Ah stood up and shouted coldly, "John, what do you want from me?" The Igut people who believed in the Ennead did not eat fish, nor did they fish in the Nile River. Since ancient times, the fish in the Nile River had the blood of Osiris in their bodies. John invited Ah to dinner today and served him a plate of fish. This was blasphemy, but it did not seem that he was trying to frame Ah, because he had eaten first. The atmosphere became a little awkward. Madanzo quickly stood up and smiled to smooth things over. "Ah, John has discovered that Moses and the others are practicing the power of 2 sides, but he did not mention it to anyone. He also knows that Link and I are your disciples, so he also wants to be taught this power. You have already taught John the mining skills of Duk on Mount Horeb. It is also because of your guidance that he can suppress the restless power. In fact, he has long been your disciple. You can officially agree." I ignored Madanzo and continued to stare at John. He asked, "So all of this was planned by you? That's not easy. I'm very happy that the hot-tempered general can be so meticulous now. I just want to ask you one thing. If I refuse your request, will you use my secret to blackmail me? Or will you hold a grudge against me?" John left his seat and knelt down. "Great General, John would never dare to do such a thing. Otherwise, I would not have made such a request. My life would be in your hands. You've done me a great favor. Even if you reject me, I will forever be grateful to you." Although I had lost her power, her detection magic and her strange sensing ability were sharper than before. Hardadef did not hide anything when he answered, and I could clearly sense the emotions in his heart, firm and sincere. I thought for a moment and sat down. He took a knife and cut a piece of fish. After eating, he drank a glass of wine. Then he slowly said, "How do you explain this plate of fish? If it's just to show my loyalty, it doesn't seem necessary, and I don't appreciate such behavior." John knelt there and raised his head. "Since I was born, everyone has told me to believe in gods and which gods to believe in. But I have never received real guidance from the gods. I have told you about my experience. I have prayed to the goddess of moonlight countless times, trying to calm the restless power, but to no avail. Until you came to Mount Horeb and brought me true clarity and peace. You told me that I must have a firm belief, whether it comes from faith or not. I must see clearly what my heart is pursuing and find a clear state of mind. Only then will I know what I have to overcome. Later I did it and became a supreme warrior. This is an achievement that many people dream of but can't achieve." Ah's expression eased, and he couldn't help but feel a little funny. The goddess of Igut mentioned by John was Batet. She was not only the underworld of Osiris, but also the goddess of moonlight, who symbolized the beauty of the world and the tranquility of the night. Although he was thinking so, he still said in a dignified tone, "I can see that your original wish has been fulfilled. Now, do you want to ask for more from me?" John shook his head and said, "No, I don't want to ask more from you. Today's plate of fish is to tell you the true faith in my heart. Just now, when Madanzo called you Ah, it was also my heart. You are so real in front of me." I asked again, "John, in your heart, what do you think of the gods?" John closed his eyes slightly, put his hand on his mouth and replied, I have no intention of disrespecting any gods. To be able to guide me to face the madness in my heart without losing control. To walk out of the troubles of my body and mind. To obtain true strength and a stable soul. This is the God. Whether he stands on the high platform of the temple, or sits in front of me eating the grilled fish that I personally serve. I finally smiled and waved his hand. Get up, sit down and eat properly. Don't follow Madanzo's nonsense in the future. John still stubbornly knelt on the ground and said, Ah God, you haven't given me clear guidance. Madanzo slapped him and said, I thought you were already smart, how did you become stupid again? Get up when I tell you to get up. John suddenly came to a realization. He bowed to awe in surprise and joy, then stood up. One night a few days later, in the open space in front of Bastet's temple, I taught John the power of two sides. It was a full moon night. The moonlight shrouded him like a thin veil. His figure was bathed in the white light, appearing tranquil and magical. I had lost his strength and did not take out his staff. As early as on Mount Horeb, I had already taught John the meditation method to practice the power of two sides. But he did not clearly explain each step and the test that he had to face. At this time, he was clearing the fog and letting him see the real path. For the first time in his life, I did not use any magic. He just let John pray under the moonlight, and with the guidance of the faith in his heart, he opened the path to the gods. This was different from any awakening ceremony in the temple. It seemed to be a single awakening under the moonlight, but several years had passed since then. I told John to forget that he was a supreme warrior when he returned, and to confirm this path from the beginning. He practiced the simplest magic, reviewed the most basic body techniques, and experienced the essence of all kinds of tests. After John left, I did not leave. He stood in front of the temple of Isis, and looked up at the moonlight in the sky. He stretched out his hand, palm up, as if touching the omnipresent light. For some reason his heart was moved, and he opened his mouth to sing a poem. It was the chapter about Batet in the ancient book. I could actually sing poetry. Perhaps even he himself could not imagine this, but at this moment, he sang it so naturally, as if he was appeasing the legendary moonlight goddess. After singing, the night was silent. I suddenly turned around and saw Schrödinger squatting on the threshold of the temple. The cat looked so pitiful, with tears in its eyes. I walked over and squatted down to ask, For the first time, I see tears in your eyes. I'm sorry. Did my singing remind you of your sad past? Schrödinger turned his head away, but his voice came from O's mind. You're wrong, that's just the reflection of the moonlight in my eyes. I'm just curious, when did you learn to sing? I asked you several times after reading the ancient book, but you didn't explain. You want me to help you get out of trouble, but I have to understand what kind of trouble it is. How do you explain the legend in the ancient book? Schrödinger. I let you read the legend, just to tell you the story of the human world. When you can understand it, you will naturally understand it. Words cannot express it. You just taught John the path to godhood, called the power of two sides, but you have to really have that power to help me. I have waited for so many years, and I don't mind waiting more. I turned to look at Schrödinger. But I don't want you to wait too long. Can you give me some hints? If this is a test, how can I pass it? Schrödinger lowered his head, buried it between his front paws and replied, You have already reached this step. Even the gods cannot directly restore your power. The test you face is a kind of understanding, not how to restore your power, but how to find yourself. Only when you let go of everything can you usher in the moment of regaining everything. I know very well how to pass this test, but telling you the truth is not enough to prove your achievements, otherwise all the people in this world will be gods. I was silent for a long time, carefully thinking about Schrödinger's words, and finally sighed. Understanding the truth and practicing it are two different things. Witnessing the existence of the gods and understanding the secret of becoming a god does not mean that you are a god. Even if you despise all the achievements in this world, drag the gods down the altar to curse, trample, and insult, you will not become more noble, let alone achieve true transcendence. I understand this truth. But according to the legend, Batet accepted the judgment of fate and became a cat, and her power was sealed and controlled by Osiris. What is this all about? Schrodinger's body curled up as if it was a little cold, and its fur was shivering. I picked it up and whispered, "What's wrong? Do you feel cold, or did I ask the wrong question?" Schrodinger replied, "You saw how Enkidu fell with your own eyes. That was the torture of fate, the judgment of the end of days. I have also experienced it. My body was destroyed, but my soul did not dissipate. I was originally a cat, but when faced with the opportunity to choose again, I became a cat again. It was Osiris who guided me to recover, but before I could understand all this, he used the oath of the gods to imprison my power." I looked down at it for a long time, frowned and said, "I don't understand." Schrodinger's sigh came from the soul. "You will understand when you can understand. There is no need for me to explain anymore. The process of you helping me break the seal will also help you face the test of breaking through to the 9th level, but it is too early to say these things now." I suddenly thought of something and asked, "Have you also experienced the test of losing your power?" Schrodinger replied, "Of course, if I had not experienced this test, how could I be sealed in the body of a cat for so many years, and still remain calm and clear-headed? Can an ordinary person do this? But you need to do this. The one who can truly guide you through this door may not be me. There may be someone else who can give you a more important revelation, and it may not be a god. But in the end, it all depends on you. When your heart is no longer trapped by the power will naturally no longer trap you." The day came and went. On the newly cultivated land, the seeds had sprouted. The long and hot summer was coming to an end. The wheat in the fields was full, and Moses and the others were about to welcome the first season of harvest. The annual blessing of the goddess of Isis was finally about to take place. I ordered Link to stay in the territory, and divided the 36 guards into 3 teams. One team stayed in the manor, and the other 2 escorted him to Montefiore. John and Madanzo also followed I had not regained his power for a long time. Although he understood the truth in Schrodinger's words, and Crazy Old's last message said something similar, it did not mean that he had passed the test. This time I not only brought 2 teams of personal guards, but also 2 experts, Metatro and Hardadef. It should be enough to ensure their safety. But during this period of time, I did one thing, and that was to practice body arts and magic arts as usual. Since he could not use his power, he practiced various martial arts and basic meditation of magic arts. He did not have to think about how to use them, and instead, he was more focused. He could feel the growth of his magic, but he could not use it. It was like a man trapped in the wilderness, constantly digging for treasures but unable to buy anything. If one day he walked out of the wilderness and came to the human world, he would have an astonishing amount of wealth. I was preparing for this. He did not know when he would regain his power, but he planned to wait for that day to come, when his achievements would be far greater than before. I set off in advance, and arrived in Montefiore a few days before the ceremony. Of course, the first thing he wanted to do was to pay a visit to the Holy Queen. He had not seen Maria for over half a year. The location of the meeting was still the Holy Lady's spacious study. The Holy Lady first greeted the general according to etiquette. The Holy Lady gave the general a seat, and talked about some past events and preparations for the ceremony. The Holy Lady also asked about the general's life in the territory. There was no lack of etiquette in the conversation. I wanted to find a chance to talk to Maria alone. But this time, before he could speak, Maria waved her hand and said, "I have a few questions to ask the general alone. You can all leave." Gabriel was already used to this scene. When the servants left the room, she went out and closed the door. Her sword guarded the door. Only Maria and I were left alone. The 2 did not speak for a long time. They just stared at each other silently, as if they were having a silent conversation. It was a rare moment to be able to stare at each other in silence. Unfortunately, the Holy Queen's time was limited. They could not silently look at each other forever. In the end, Maria sighed softly and broke the silence. Your achievements surprised me. I knew you would do well, but I didn't expect you to do so well." I also sighed. "I remember when the army returned to Montefiore. You were the only one who did not congratulate me. You only sent people to express encouragement and blessings. Everything I have obtained today, The person I should thank the most is you, Maria. Everything came from your guidance and help. She did not call him General, but directly called him Ah. She also did not call her the Holy Queen, but directly called Maria. Maria looked at him, and the light in her eyes seemed to be the blessing of Isis. She said slowly, I didn't congratulate you at that time, because I know that's not what you want, and it's not what you're truly pursuing. Although your name has spread far and wide, and your might has shaken Igut, you did not come for it in the first place. Whether you gain or lose everything, you will not be moved. You want to save your people and lead them back to their homeland, but your wish has not been fulfilled. In my eyes, you are the one who needs to be comforted the most. When she spoke, her lips were slightly parted. She looked so beautiful, so charming. I even avoided her eyes for a moment, lowering his head to look at his hands. Then he raised his eyes again, staring at her red eyes. Everything about me cannot be hidden from your eyes. Maria asked again. You can already fulfill your wish today. Why have you not done so yet? This time, Ashur really lowered his head and replied in a low voice, You know my situation. Although my position is incomparably honorable, and my fame and glory have reached the peak, I cannot leave my territory at will. This time, I took the opportunity to participate in the ceremony to come see you. Moreover, I have lost my power, and am far from being powerful and magical. I do not know how to recover, and when can I recover? Under these circumstances, I am not confident. With my character, I have to consider everything carefully, so I have not made a decision yet. This was originally Ashur's most confidential secret. He had not mentioned it to George, Madanzo, Link, John and the others, but under Maria's gaze he calmly revealed it. Maria was slightly taken aback. You hid it very well, even I did not see it. Thank you for trusting me and telling me all this. Ashur folded his hands together, lowered his head, and smiled bitterly. If I don't even trust you, who else can I trust? Maria looked at him, and gradually, there was an invisible pressure in her eyes. You are wrong about one thing. You have considered everything carefully. Even the gods cannot decide everything in the world. You have done the best, and there is no way you can do better. This is not your character. Otherwise, you would not have ambushed the enemy and captured King Hittite alive. Can I ask you a few questions? Please answer me, and also answer yourself. Ashur, ask away. Maria. You were once a passerby who almost died by the Nile River, but later became a general whose power shook the continent. Are you still a passerby on the Nile River on the battlefield? When you returned with glory, you could not leave your territory because of your military power. Are you still a general on the battlefield in your territory? Now you are sitting in front of me with your head lowered. Are you still the innocent boy in Duk? If not, then who are you? If you are, then who is Ashur? Ah finally raised his head, and his eyes met hers again. I understand. Maria. Do you really understand? Chapter 159. Summon all the most beautiful girls. He actually called the name that he hadn't mentioned for a long time. Maria's long eyelashes trembled slightly. She looked back at the table in front of her and asked in a low voice, How did you understand? Ahmad replied, It's just a very simple truth. I have personally experienced it. When I lost the power to command thousands of troops, I didn't feel that I had lost anything. I didn't even think about it. But all this time, I have been thinking about the lost power, because the path I am pursuing is so difficult, but it used to not belong to me. I am not trying to get back the power, nor am I giving up the power. Whether I have it or not, it will not change because of this. The one sitting in front of you is still me, just like whether I am the supreme general of the empire or not. Maria smiled. You finally understand that this is not a test of your power. The power and magic you used to have is precisely what troubles you today. Just like ordinary bread, it hasn't changed, but when a person has tasted all the delicacies, can he still enjoy them? And delicacies are still delicacies, it doesn't mean giving up. Ahmad also smiled. From what you said, you should have achieved the 8th level. Congratulations. May I ask a few questions? I have not seen any relevant records in the books of the Temple of Isis. Do other supreme warriors or supreme mages also have to face this test when they advance from the 7th level to the 8th level? Maria thought for a moment and replied, there is no clear record, but this situation may happen. When a 7th level supreme warrior reaches the peak of his power, he sometimes feels as weak as a newborn baby, as if he needs to grow up again in order to gain greater power. Some of them will advance to the 8th level. Some 7th level mages, when they reach the peak of the realm, feel that they can't bear the growth of magic power, so they can't adapt to it and can't use magic for a period of time. It doesn't happen to everyone. It lasts for a different period of time and manifests in different ways. I've never heard of a case like yours. Sure enough, there was a similar situation. No wonder Crazy Ol left such a message in the Taraculus. Ahmad asked curiously, how does it cause this? Why is it not recorded in the books? Maria frowned slightly and replied thoughtfully, the number of supreme warriors or supreme mages is very small, so this kind of situation may not necessarily occur, and the form of occurrence is not the same. The ancient books of the Isis Shrine mentioned it, but they were not very clear. The archives of the Igut Academy of Magic had more records about it. When a supreme mage or warrior's power was hindered, they would generally not make it known to others. They would only pray to the gods or seek help from a trustworthy high priest. Some people thought that this was a test from the gods, while others thought that it was a punishment from the gods after one's power grew too much and looked down on the gods, causing their faith to waver. But so far, the most authoritative view was that there was a mistake or deviation in the training. After all, at this level, there aren't many systematic experiences that can be used as reference. Most of them are personal explorations. I couldn't help but lean forward and asked with great interest, how should we help them in this kind of situation? Maria. There is no set rule, everyone's situation is different. If a supreme warrior feels weak, he will persist in the most basic training and grow like a newborn or reborn. According to some people's descriptions, it is like a seed has sprouted in the body and obtained a new bloodline. At this time, he will advance to the 8th level of supreme warrior. But most people only recover their strength and do not advance. As for supreme mages, they often ask the gods for help in prayer and reflect on whether their faith has wavered. Generally, they need to shut themselves off from visitors and meditate quietly. The results are usually the same. The Igut Academy of Magic occasionally holds a secret ritual to help them recover their strength. The main purpose of this ritual is to let them feel the gaze of the gods, to make their faith pure and firm, and not to despise the gods because of the expansion of power. It has no fixed form and varies from person to person. It is neither like the initial awakening of power, nor like the second awakening of power held for supreme warriors. Only supreme mages with this kind of experience can give guidance. I nodded thoughtfully and said, the reawakening of power. Maria also nodded and said, have you given this ritual a name? Do you need me to hold such a ritual for you? As she spoke, she looked at Ah with a faint smile, implying that she had a similar experience, but had successfully passed the test and become an 8th level supreme mage. Ah stood up and bowed. I don't know how to express my gratitude. If there is such a ritual, you would have held it for me just now. Maria blinked, looking a little playful like a little girl. How can you thank me? This question stumped Ah, as if it was one of the most difficult questions in the world to answer. How could he thank her? Maria had done too much for Ah. Not only did she save his life by the Nile River, but she also brought him back to the Temple of Isis to provide shelter. She also guided him to find his clansmen in Duk, taught him the art of war, and recommended him to be the head of a legion. She seized a seemingly impossible opportunity to fulfill his wish. Ah had made incredible achievements with his own efforts, but all of this would have been unimaginable without Maria's help and guidance. He stood there for a long time before replying, I don't know how to thank you. Without you, I wouldn't have what I have today. But I don't know what else I can do for you other than sitting here and staring at you. As the guardian of the Temple of Isis, Maria lacked nothing in the world of wealth and power. In the empire of Igut, she only needed to take the initiative to bow to the gods and the pharaoh. Her status was equal to that of the prime minister, the chief high priest, and the chief elder of the Academy of Magic. What I could give her, Maria already had. What Maria did not have, I could not give her. She was a benefactor that he could never repay. It was rare for Maria to joke with Ah, but I answered so seriously and solemnly. The two were silent for a moment, Ah standing, Maria sitting, their eyes intertwined and looked into each other's eyes. After a while, Maria softly said, I understand your strength. Your will is almost perfect, but I see your weakness in your eyes. If you don't have this weakness, you may become truly perfect and strong. Weakness? At this moment, Ah's eyes only had Maria's reflection. He lowered his eyes again and said, Perhaps having regrets is the true perfection of experiencing the world. Maria looked at him hesitant to speak, and finally smiled. She no longer entangled with this topic, and slightly raised the corner of her mouth. You haven't answered my question yet. How are you going to thank me? I also smiled. I really don't know how to thank you. If the Holy Queen has any orders, just say it. I will not refuse. Maria blinked her eyes. Oh, in that case, I want to ask the Supreme General for something. I was startled. What do you want? As long as I have it, I can give it to you. Maria looked up at the mural on the ceiling, and unhurriedly said, When you first came to Igut, it was to return Nero's relics. Nero's will, however, was not strictly carried out. He mentioned in his will that the person who returned the relic was allowed to consult one of his personal notes. After you came to the Temple of Isis, I specially investigated, and you did not read it. Later, I ordered people to send the notes to Montefiore, and the content Nero specified was a scroll called Tiamat's Wrath. Nero once made a legendary Tiamat's Wrath. Please tell me, is it in your hands? I helplessly nodded. Yes, in my hands. This scroll has accompanied me through countless dangers. Maria stretched out her hand across the table. This is what I want. Give it to me now. I was puzzled. What do you want it for? Maria's smile became a little mischievous. Supreme General, you just made such a resolute promise. Why are you so hesitant when I ask for something? Give it to me first, then I'll tell you the reason. Take it out, you must carry it with you. I reached into his chest and pulled out a small gray scroll from his clothes. He took a few steps forward with both hands and carefully placed it on Maria's table. But he did not retreat, but looked at Maria with his hand on the table. Holy Queen, can you tell me now, why do you want this scroll, and how do you know I will carry it with me? Maria reached out to pick up the most precious and dangerous scroll in the world, and gently caressed it. It's not that I need it, but that you don't need it anymore. I've looked up the details of this scroll, and it's not opened with magic power, but with a vow of life. The user only needs to be an advanced divine incantation, and it's the only scroll you can use at the moment, so why don't you carry it with you? You came to see me today, and I can feel the anxiety in your heart. Only by giving it to me can you truly be free from your troubles. I sighed. Please take this scroll and seal it in the Temple of Isis. Maria actually laughed and suddenly waved her hand, taking out an identical gray scroll, and threw it to Ah. Thank you for giving me such a precious thing. I'll also give you a gift in return. Ah caught it and was shocked. Tiamat's Wrath. You actually have one? Something's not right. I was in front of Maria, and when she threw it, not only did he not dodge, but he also reached out to catch it. If it was any other situation, he would have already run away. Maria smiled. Did you notice something wrong? This scroll is indeed Tiamat's Wrath. It's made of the same material and method, but it wasn't written successfully. After opening it, it's blank. When it explodes, everyone within its attack range will feel the pull of life force, but will not suffer any harm. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fake. Who would make such a scroll? Maria shook her head. It's already very difficult to make such a scroll. A long time ago, the Temple of Isis gathered a group of supreme mages in an attempt to make a Tiamat's Wrath, but they failed many times, and in the end, only this almost blank scroll was left. There were a few of these blank scrolls, and they were the basis for making Tiamat's Wrath. However, they couldn't gather enough magic power to write it, and every time it was written, it would be destroyed, and even caused a huge explosion of energy, resulting in heavy casualties. Thus they had to give up. This last blank scroll is still very precious. In theory, it can be used to make the real Tiamat's wrath, but in my opinion, there's no need for that. You're the only one in this world who has the real Tiamat's wrath, so you can sense that something is wrong, but can others tell? Even if they can, and suspect that it's fake, who dares to bet? I know that the real Tiamat's wrath is in your hands, and there must be others who know. The power of this scroll doesn't lie in you using it, but in people knowing that you have it. If one day you really use it, it's nothing more than choosing a way to destroy yourself. I don't want to see that day ever come. Now do you understand why I'm doing this? I finally completely understood Maria's intentions, and couldn't help but want to hold her hand, but he didn't really stretch it out, and just stood in front of the table, staring at her. The two were only 3 feet apart, and they could feel each other's breath. Maria looked up at Ah, and suddenly lowered her eyelashes, saying, "Why are you living like this? Maybe it's time to start a family." "Actually," Ah interrupted her, "I'm still very young, I don't want to talk about this." At this time, Gabriel loudly reported from outside, "Lady Holy Queen, the governor of Montefiore requests an audience with you to discuss the matter of the guards for the blessing ceremony." Maria gently sighed and put away Tiamat's wrath, then raised her voice and replied in a dignified tone, "Invite him in, it just so happens that General Ah is also here." After bidding farewell to Maria, Ah left the shrine with Governor Jehudi Hotep, and returned to his temporary residence in Montefiore. He immediately called Madanzo and ordered him to return to his territory to do something. Ah finally decided to let Moses and the others set off. Nominally, they were Ah's slaves, and they were going to another territory under the command of General Jehudi Hotep. This group of people had to pass through the border checkpoint of Igut, but Ah didn't send anyone to escort them. He only gave Moses a warrant, telling him to lead his people back to their homeland. Ah also ordered Madanzo and Link to follow them in secret, and if they encountered any unexpected danger, they were to quietly take care of it. There was no need to show up in public. When these people encountered danger, Madanzo and Link could appear in the name of Allah's emissary at the right time, giving them confidence and courage to guide them. This was a long journey, and they would first have to pass through the hinterland of Igut, as well as the monster-infested deserts, jungles, wastelands, and swamps. This was also a test of willpower and faith. Under normal circumstances, the main dangers of this journey should be in the deserts and swamps outside of Igut, while in Igut, they would be able to take the official roads between the cities. For convenience, Ah gave several precious magic tools, including the crystal shuttle, the spirit-chasing lamp, and the spyglass, to Madanzo and Link. Madanzo left Montefiore that afternoon, while Moses and the others had dozens of cars and a large number of daily necessities with them. The speed of the journey would not be too fast, and it would take at least several months to reach the plains of Duk. After Madanzo left, John felt very bored, because I usually only flipped through various ancient books in his room and rarely went out, and as the captain of the guards, he could not go out for a stroll either. I saw this, and asked John with a smile during dinner that day, "Before going to Mount Horeb, you lived in Montefiore. Where do you usually go to have fun at night? Since you have nothing to do, why don't you take me there too?" John was overjoyed and laughed. "Supreme General, I've been waiting for you to say this. Just follow me, I'll treat you to dinner tonight." I changed into comfortable plain clothes and followed John out, deliberately not bringing any guards, and let John drive himself to a very prosperous street in the west of the city, which was relatively far from the shrine, but very close to the places where the shops were concentrated. John stopped in front of a large brightly lit courtyard, and Ah's expression looked a little strange. This turned out to be the most luxurious brothel in Montefiore. I knew this place. When Aesop accompanied him to go shopping, they once passed by this brothel, and he specifically mentioned that this place only served nobles, and that it was one of the regrets of Western European masters who were so rich could not go in and have fun. At that time, Western Europe was not yet a noble, and neither was Ah, but I had never entered any brothel, so there was nothing to regret. As soon as he saw Ah's expression, John was happy, grabbed his arm and whispered, "Ah God, you should really experience the world. You should know that life is not only about training or fighting. You are the supreme general of the empire. And you are so young and handsome. You should come to this kind of place more often." Without saying a word, he pulled in. John was obviously familiar with the place. Even the staff here knew him. As soon as he entered, he ordered the brothel's servants to take the carriage away, and then loudly greeted them, asking them to arrange the best incense hall for him. Everything according to the highest standards, and he did not care how much it cost. They entered a small incense hall. The so-called small hall was definitely not small. There were spacious chairs, and the table in front of it was filled with wine and delicacies. There was a pool in front of the table. The pool was actually warm water, and there were even flower petals sprinkled on it. After sitting down, someone played an instrument. The band played behind a screen, and could not see what was going on in the hall. As soon as John sat down, he ordered the staff to call all the best girls here, and have them sing and dance on the carpet in front of the pool, so that the Supreme General could appreciate them. If I fancied one or a few girls, he would stay and drink with them. Not long after, a dozen beautiful girls arrived, and sang and danced in the hall, separated by the pool. The clothes they wore were very interesting. All of them were necklaces, and their plump bosoms only covered the two highest points, but hanging in front of them was a string of curtain-like metal pendants, making melodious sounds when they collided. Their skirts were cut into many strips, and when their waists swayed, a slender person's body was exposed. This kind of half-concealment was even more ambiguous. They did not wear many clothes, but they still wore veils. This veil could not cover their faces, because it was almost transparent, and was adorned with pieces of sparkling objects, setting off the faintly discernible appearance of the girls even more bewitching. They twisted their bodies in various seductive postures, and their mouths lightly sang noble poems, causing one's lust to sprout uncontrollably. This was O's first time witnessing such a scene, but he behaved similarly in any occasion. This 19-year-old youth had never wasted food, and upon seeing the fine wine and delicacies on the table, he would earnestly eat and drink, chewing and swallowing slowly, occasionally taking a sip of wine. Occasionally he would hear a few verses of poems sung by the girls that were very well written, and would intentionally raise his head to take a look, before lowering his head to continue eating and drinking. John was watching with great interest, as he raised his wine cup, and even used his fingers to tap the cup rhythmically. After a song, John turned his head and asked, "Supreme General, who do you fancy? Just let them walk past the pool." The rules here were very particular. If a guest wanted a girl to stay, the girl had to walk over from the pool, and when she reached the guest, her entire body would be drenched. This could be considered as a deliberate arrangement of the mood. There were also those impatient guests. When the girl entered the pool, they would strip off their clothes and jump into the pool to play. I was taken aback, as he put down his cup and raised his head. "John, do as you see fit. I don't have anyone that wants to stay." John scratched the back of his head and laughed. "Your vision is high, this subordinate admires it." He then waved his hand at the girls across the pool. "All of you stay, accompany me." The girls were originally disappointed, but upon hearing this, they all laughed coquettishly, and jumped into the pool, splashing water everywhere. And Johann sat on either side of each other, their reclining chairs separated by a screen. The long reclining chairs were very spacious, and could even be used as a bed. However, the dozen girls all ran to John's side, and squeezed to the brim. Not all of them could sit down. 2 of them simply sat on John's lap, but all of them secretly sized up with curious gazes. This young lad was robust and handsome. In fact, the girls were more than willing to accompany him, but I didn't fancy any of them, and couldn't help but be a little angry. O's expression didn't change as he continued to eat and drink, using a knife to clean the bones. This caused the girls to be puzzled. If he wanted to eat, he could have gone to a restaurant. Why would he spend so much money here just to eat? When John saw this, he immediately barked out, "Call your boss Dylan over." Not long after, the boss of the brothel came in, and when he saw the dozen girls surrounding John and drinking, he could not help but groan inwardly. Dylan had long known this John. A few years ago, John had caused quite a bit of trouble here, and when he drank too much, he even injured a few nobles, and almost destroyed a small hall in the brothel. Why is he here again? Damn it. The boss carefully asked. "So it's Lord John, welcome. Is there anything you're dissatisfied with?" Do you have any orders? Chapter 160. Causing havoc in Montefiore raised his head. There's no need for that. It's not that the girls are bad, I'm just not interested. John shook his head. Supreme General, please don't say that. It's rare for me to invite you here. How can I not do a good job? In Igut's court, if you make such a gesture, it means that you are reprimanding your subordinates for not doing their job well. I replied. There's such a thing? All right, since I'm here with you today, I won't reject your request. The owner of the brothel said with a bitter face. Lord John, you've already invited all the most beautiful girls here. How can there be anyone better? John glared at him and barked. Bullshit. Don't think I don't know. Before I came here, I heard that you have a top girl called Miss Phi, known as the Lady of Montefiore, and every dance requires a parangan as a reward. I've always wanted to see her. Why don't you let her come? The owner of the brothel said with a troubled expression. Lord John might not know, but someone has already made an appointment with Miss Phi, and it's the deputy head of the treasury, Lord Sabaf. He had already sent someone to inform Miss Phi that there will be a group of important guests here tonight, and he specifically asked Miss Phi to dance and entertain them. At this moment, John suddenly heard a soft voice in his mind. My personal guard captain, this is an order. You must let this girl come today. I'm going with you to purposely let people see me having fun in Montefiore. This is a good opportunity. Don't be afraid of offending those people. I'll take responsibility for anything that happens. Even without a secret order, John would have done it anyway, because the deputy head of the treasury, Lord Sabaf, mentioned by the brothel owner, had a grudge with him. The priest who had once impeached Hardadef and was killed for no apparent reason was Sabaf's distant cousin, and Sabaf himself was the nephew of the Prime Minister of Egypt. He was able to achieve his current status by relying on his family background. When John was accused, the whole family had done a lot of bad things. Now that he had received the Supreme General's order, John was not going to let the matter rest. He picked up the knife on the table and gently trimmed his nails as he stared at the brothel owner and asked coldly, Is Sabaf here? Dylan felt a chill down his spine when he saw John's murderous glare, and he subconsciously took a step back. Lord Sabaf is not here yet. John said. Then we were here first. We're not being unreasonable. Cut the crap and call the city of Montefiore over. Dylan pleaded. Lord John, I'll find another girl for your friend. I'm sure she's better. As for Miss Phi, I'm afraid that Lord Sabaf will find trouble with us when he arrives. Waving the knife in front of his eyes, John replied. I'm not sure if he will come looking for trouble with you, and I'm also too lazy to care about it. That's your business. But if you don't do as I say now, I can guarantee that there will be trouble immediately. I've been drinking like a gentleman today, and I haven't caused any trouble yet. As he spoke, he threw a small pouch over, and when Dylan opened it, he saw that it was filled with parangons. John shouted again. Is it enough? Dylan wiped the sweat off his forehead and nodded repeatedly. It's enough. It's more than enough to buy this entire hall. John nodded politely. If that's the case, I can even tear this place down, right? But I don't want to. I still need to keep this place to entertain my guests. After the brothel owner left with the pouch, Arya turned to John curiously and asked, There's a girl here who's known as the City of Montefiore, and she actually costs a parangan for a dance? That's too expensive. John laughed heartily. Supreme General, I know that ordinary women are not worthy of your attention, but after thinking about it, there's only one girl who can move your heart. Ha ha ha, you'll know why she's so famous when you see her. At this moment, the sound of musical instruments could be heard from behind the curtain. It was a small hammer hitting a clapperboard, and the rhythm was similar to that of a war drum. There was a sense of majesty and sternness to it, but the atmosphere was much more relaxed at this moment. What kind of show is this? Beating the drums in a brothel? Accompanied by the sound of clappers that sounded like war drums, a girl walked around the screen in front of her and walked in. Unexpectedly, she was holding a shining long sword in her hand. The scene was getting more and more interesting. A girl from a brothel actually entered the hall with a sword in her hand, and the person who came was the famous City of Montefiore, Miss Phi. She was indeed different from the other girls. First of all, she wore more clothes than the other girls. Although she was also wearing a midriff dress, it wasn't just two small pieces. Instead, it was a tight-fitting shirt, and there wasn't any curtain-like metal hanging in front of her, revealing her soft shoulders and arms. Her abdomen was tight, and her waist was graceful. She didn't wear a veil, and her eyes were brown, clear like spring water, but slightly cold. Her facial features were beautiful, and there was a trace of stubbornness in them. When she smiled, it was as if the wind had melted the ice, and she looked so gentle and charming. She walked to the carpet opposite the sink, and with both hands on the hilt of her sword, she bowed according to the etiquette of a warrior and smiled. Her smile was beautiful, but Arya frowned slightly. This girl was vaguely emitting killing intent, and there was a hint of suppressed anger in her heart. Arya could sense the true emotions of others. She was obviously unhappy with Jon and Arya for causing trouble, but she hid it in her heart and didn't express it. This made Arya feel a little strange. It was the same for a girl in a brothel, and Jon had given her a lot of money, so why was she so angry? Could it be that this girl from Montefiore was Lord Sabaf's lover, and she was waiting for her lover to arrive tonight, because she was unhappy with Arya and Jon for ruining her plans? After Ms. Fi bowed, she began to dance with her sword to the sound of the war drums. Arya was shocked. This girl did not use her sword as a prop to dance, nor was it an ordinary dance. It was obvious that she knew real martial arts, and she deliberately hid it in her dance to display the beauty of strength and gentleness. There were very few women who practiced body techniques. To be able to integrate a martial technique into a sword dance, and still be able to display such a moving beauty, it was simply too rare. She was a true warrior, so how could she become a prostitute in a brothel? What happened next surprised Arya even more. The sound of the clappers became more rapid, and the sword in Miss Fi's hand had already turned into a field of silver light. The band behind the curtain blew the bugle again, and the sound of the bugle and the clappers fluctuated rapidly. Miss Fi began to sing in the midst of the sword dance. Please tell me, God is my light, my salvation, my guarantee of life. Please tell me, under the light of God, I will not fear the enemy's sword or spear. Then who am I afraid of? Who am I afraid of and who will be injured by? When the enemy's chariots and horses rushed over, his heart was not afraid. Behind him was Arya's tent. He once faced his enemies with his head held high, sacrificed himself to God, and listened to the song of the sky. O God, the God who saved me, do not abandon your people. I am looking for you. Please listen and have mercy. Do not hide your face from me. Whose abandonment is this? Whose sins are you forgiving? Please strengthen my heart. I will finally see you. The more Arya listened, the more interested he became. This was not an ordinary song and dance, because the girl was using real martial arts. Under such circumstances, not to mention singing, even speaking would require breathing. This girl in Montefiore had obviously trained hard, and the technique she used was very ingenious. The movements of the sword dance matched the rhythm of her breathing, and she sang such a poem with a sweet and graceful voice. The war last year had brought about a martial culture among the nobles in Igut, and carrying a sword was now very fashionable in Montefiore. According to the laws of Igut, it was illegal to carry a weapon outside the city at night without permission, and gathering more than 10 people to carry a weapon would be seen as a rebellion. But the laws were laws, and enforcement was another matter. When the patrolling guards saw the nobles carrying a sword, they thought it was fashionable, and usually turned a blind eye to it. No one would care about this kind of thing. This girl's face and figure were very beautiful, and she had such a moving voice. That vigorous sword dance made her figure even more delicate, and she gave off a completely different feeling from other girls. She was more exciting, more novel, more mysterious and more challenging. Even if you searched all the major brothels in Montefiore, you would not be able to find a second girl like her. No wonder she was known as the Queen of Montefiore. Although her swordsmanship was nothing in the eyes of a martial arts grandmaster like Arya, it was already very rare for an ordinary girl. Especially her singing and dancing skills. It was simply amazing, and Arya could not help but be entranced by it. On the other side, Jon was staring at Ms. Fi with an intoxicated expression. He held a glass of wine in his hand, and even forgot to close his mouth. The dozen or so girls around John were also beautiful, but compared to Miss Fi, they paled in comparison. They were like flowers drawn by a craftsman on a drawing board, while Miss Fi was like a flower swaying in the wind. The poem that Miss Fi was singing actually mentioned that Arya was now a famous hero of the Empire. There were also many wandering poets who wrote poems about his legend and sang them everywhere. It was not surprising to hear one or two of them occasionally. It was just that this girl was not singing about Arya's achievements. Instead, she was describing a warrior in the army, and at the same time, she seemed to be questioning the gods about something. After the song ended, John was still in a daze with his mouth agape. Arya lightly clapped his hands and laughed. "Miss, your swordsmanship is very beautiful, but I can tell that you did not display your true swordsmanship. Because you are deliberately pursuing a beautiful dance, you have changed the rhythm and technique that a swordsmanship should have. Actually, there is no need for that." Miss Fi was currently keeping her sword and bowing. She looked up curiously and asked, "Esteemed lord, I believe you are a swordsmanship expert. Could it be that you are also proficient in singing and dancing?" I laughed and shook his head. "I am not proficient in singing and dancing, but I know what is the essence of swordsmanship. The true essence of swordsmanship is able to display the most perfect rhythm and posture. You do not have to deliberately search for it, just integrate your body and mind into the sword, and that will be the most beautiful sword dance." Hardedef finally came back to his senses and chuckled. "Miss, you've met a real expert today." Arya patted the chair beside him. "Come over and sit down. Let's have a drink together." He got Miss Fi to stay behind to accompany him. Tonight, he finally did not have to sit alone. Miss Fi smiled as she walked past the deep pool and placed her sword on the table beside Arya. She then picked up a cup. Arya casually picked up the wine pot and poured a full cup for Miss Fi. Even the Lord of Montefiore did not have such a privilege to be personally poured wine by the Supreme General of the Empire. But in such an occasion, it was indeed a scene to behold. Before Miss Fi could drink the cup of wine, she heard a loud bang. Someone knocked open the door of the hall and kicked over the screen in front of him. He pointed his sword at John and shouted angrily, "I was just about to settle the score with you. You still dare to find trouble with me today? You are courting death." The person who came was none other than Lord Sabaf, the Deputy Chief of Finance of Montefiore. The ceremony of Isis's blessing was in 6 days, and many people were already gathered in Montefiore. Among them, there were many members of his family who were close to him. Today he was here to entertain a group of important guests. In the afternoon, he had already informed Miss Fi to sing and dance, but when he arrived, Miss Fi did not appear. It was said that she was accompanying another guest. This caused Lord Sabaf to lose a lot of face, and he called the boss over to reprimand him. The boss of the brothel, Dylan, told him that Miss Fi was called away by John. Sabaf's face turned cold as he asked, "Which John?" Dylan replied with a bitter expression. "Which John could it be? It's that John who came back from the battlefield after gaining merits, but was punished with a demotion. If it was someone else, it would still be fine. But when it came to John, Sabaf was enraged and charged over. He had a grudge against John, and he had long wanted to settle the score with John. It was just that he never had the chance to do so. Sabaf's cousin Laderos, who grew up with Sabaf, was killed in the capital half a year ago because he tried to impeach John. Everyone thought that John was the murderer, but there was no evidence. John was still at large, and how could Sabaf take this lying down? It was not the first time that John got drunk and started a fight in the brothel. Almost all the nobles in Montefiore knew about his temperament. Today, it was John who initiated a fight with Sabaf over a girl, and it was obvious that he was deliberately looking for trouble. Since that was the case, Sabaf could not blame Sabaf for taking this opportunity to kill him. Today's opportunity was too good. Even if word got out, John would still be the one causing trouble in the brothel, and he could only blame himself for being unlucky. Sabaf had a good plan in mind, but he was not aware of the latest situation. He did not know that John had advanced to become a supreme warrior, nor did he know that John had become the personal guard captain of Supreme General Ah. He thought that John was still the same general who was reprimanded by the pharaoh and had his title stripped. According to the usual practice, when a warrior was promoted to a supreme warrior, the city-state would hold a celebration ceremony and make an announcement. However, when John was promoted, he happened to be in the Cape States as punishment for being stripped of his title, so it was naturally inappropriate to hold a celebration ceremony. Neither Montefiore nor the Cape States made an announcement, so it was normal that Sabaf did not know about it. After John returned to Montefiore, he followed George to Os territory and no one saw him again. They all thought that this general was too ashamed to meet anyone and had gone into seclusion somewhere. I appointed John as the personal guard captain and directly reported it to Igut's military headquarters, so there was no need to inform the city-state of Montefiore. Of course, the idling Sabaf did not know about it. However, these were not the most serious mistakes. What was worse was that Lord Sabaf did not know Back when he was in the Temple of Isis, did not go out, and there were very few officials in the city-state who knew him. When he was promoted to a supreme warrior, the governor of the city specially held a celebration ceremony, but Sabaf did not attend. After Zayu returned to Montefiore, all the nobles in Montefiore came to congratulate him, but Sabaf did not go to meet the supreme general. Sabaf wanted to take the opportunity to teach John a lesson today, but he was worried that he would not be a match for Zayu alone, so he shouted in the hall, "The murderer who killed Laderos, John, is here, and he deliberately provoked us. Who wants to go and take revenge with me?" The lackeys all drew their swords and rushed over with Sabaf. Sabaf was the first to kick down the screen, and after cursing John, he pointed his sword at "How dare you snatch a girl from me? I think you must be tired of living." Seeing Sabaf approaching with his sword, Ms. Phi subconsciously put down her wine glass and reached for the sword on the table, but did not even look at her, and did not even bat an eyelid. He picked up the table knife and swung it lightly, hitting Miss Phi's elbow firmly and accurately. The girl felt half of her body go numb, and she sat down involuntarily, the sword in her hand falling to the ground. Turned his head and said to John with a smile, "There's an assassin." At the same time, John heard Ashisi's voice in his mind. "Don't kill anyone, just break one arm and throw it on the street." The girls around Hardadef let out a cry of surprise, and in the next moment, Hardadef and Sabaf disappeared from the reclining chair. John's speed was too fast, like a raging wolf jumping off the chair, and with a tap of his foot, he appeared at the entrance of the pool in a flash. With a tap of his foot on the surface of the water, he soared into the air, and even the soles of his shoes did not get wet. The pool with floating petals seemed to be hit by an invisible force, causing ripples to form. Before Sabaf could even see Os's face clearly, he felt the back of his neck being grabbed by someone. His body went limp, and he lost all his strength. His sword fell to the ground with a clatter, and he was carried away. That night, something shocking happened in front of the most luxurious brothel in Montefiore. Sabaf, the deputy head of the finance department and the nephew of the prime minister, was thrown onto the streets like a dead dog, and even had one of his arms broken. The guests he was entertaining also had their weapons taken away and thrown out one by one. The culprit caused such a huge mess, but he acted as if nothing had happened, and continued drinking with the girls. Of course, there were guards in the brothel, and they were there to prevent people from fighting and causing trouble. However, if there was a conflict between the nobles, the guards would not dare to intervene. Both parties would be responsible for the injuries, and it would not be good for anyone in the brothel to be injured, so they could only watch as John committed the crime. Furthermore, with John's methods, who here could be his match? Sabaf's companions cursed and scolded, but they did not dare to make a move on the spot. Their weapons had already been taken away by John, and he had already shown them mercy. They could only carry Sabaf's broken arm onto the carriage, and quickly return to the residence to look for a doctor to treat his injuries. They could not take this lying down, so they called for another group of warriors to use their numbers to boost their courage, and they charged into the brothel. The city guards they met along the way did not dare to stop them, but when they reached the entrance of the brothel, they met someone who did not buy it. With an order from this person, a large number of ferocious soldiers pounced on them and disarmed them. A few of them did not understand the situation and shouted, "Do you know who we are? How dare you meddle in our business?" That person replied coldly, "I don't know who you are, But I should tell you who I am. I am the chief warrior of the Temple of Isis, the commander of the Legion of Isis, Ankh. During the blessing ceremony of Isis, I will be in charge of the security of the city. You are causing trouble for me, do you know that? A guard beside him asked. Commander, should we send these people to the city's prison? Ankh shook his head. No, lock them up in the barracks first, and after the blessing ceremony, they will be dealt with according to military law. The words dealt with according to military law was too frightening, and a few of the more cowardly ones almost cried on the spot. They hurriedly admitted their mistakes and begged for mercy, saying that they did not mean to cause trouble, but that Lord Sabaf was interrupted by a criminal here, and they were here to catch the culprit. Ankh did not listen to their explanation, and waved his hand to order his guards to take them away. Why would Ankh be here? Coincidentally, this supreme warrior was in charge of the security of the city during the blessing ceremony. Due to the incident during the blessing ceremony 2 years ago, and the war between Igut and a neighboring country last year, the security of this year's blessing ceremony had to be taken very seriously. After a busy day, Ankh naturally wanted to relax at night, and so he brought his guards to the brothel, intending to go in and drink with the ladies. But before he reached the entrance, he saw a group of people being thrown out of the brothel, cursing as they left. The commander called the owner of the brothel out to ask him, who was the one causing trouble here tonight? Why was Lord Sabaf's wedding interrupted? This supreme warrior did it on purpose. He saw Lord Sabaf and saw that his leg was broken, but he did not do anything. The owner of the brothel sobbed as he explained what happened. It turned out that Lord John accompanied a young man in his 20s to have fun, and that young man had high standards. He did not like other ladies, but he insisted on Lady Miss Fi of Montefiore to accompany him to drink. Lord Sabaf had a group of important guests to entertain tonight, and he had already informed Miss Fi to sing and dance to liven things up. He thought that John was deliberately looking for trouble, so he drew his sword and rushed into the brothel. After that, General John showed his might, and Lord Sabaf and his friends were all thrown out. Now General John and the young man were still drinking in the brothel, acting as if nothing had happened, and even ordered the waiter to change the screen. Chapter 161. She is the murderer. Ankh did not disturb the Supreme General's elegance, and only instructed the brothel owner. Do you know who General John is entertaining today? It's the Supreme General of the Empire. Wait on him carefully, and when he's done, pass a message to me. Tell him that Ankh came over and settled a small problem, so that the Supreme General can enjoy himself. It's rare for him to come back to Montefiore, so don't let him down. Ankh was still not satisfied after capturing a group of people, so he left the brothel and went straight to Sabaf's residence. He broke 3 doors and dragged Sabaf out of bed. Sabaf was waiting for news of John being captured by his companions, but he did not expect Ankh to break his left leg. Ankh did not touch Sabaf's right leg, which was just fixed with a splint, but broke his left leg with a wave of his hand. Sabaf fainted on the spot from the pain, and Ankh woke him up and said, "Do you know what you've done? How dare you commit murder in front of the Supreme General?" Ankh wanted to bring Sabaf back to the barracks as well, but seeing that he had 2 broken legs, it would not be easy to deal with him. Furthermore, he would have to send people to take care of him, so he did not bring him back. Why did Ankh do this? In fact, he hated Sabaf and his people. John and Ankh had fought side by side and gained glory through their military exploits. Yet he was impeached and stripped of his position. This was a slap to Os' face. Ankh was once a general under Os' command, and he felt that this was a humiliation to the warrior's glory. In terms of fighting and causing trouble, Ankh was not inferior to John when he was young. Furthermore, he had a solid foundation in Igut's military, and he was never afraid of anyone. Now that he had become the chief warrior of the Temple of Isis and the general of the Empire's army, he was naturally more mature in his actions. However, he had always been the one who provoked others. Today, he seized the opportunity to vent his anger on behalf of Ah and John, as well as on behalf of the soldiers at the front lines. Wasn't it just breaking a leg? If John dared to do it, why wouldn't he? Besides, there was a reason for this incident, so who could do anything to him? That night, Montefiore was bustling with activity. Draco had captured so many young nobles at once. How could these people not have relatives and friends? The entire city was about to explode. Many relatives and elders of those who had been arrested went to the city lord's mansion to ask for their release, but they were not in the city's prison. City Lord Jehudi-Hotep went to look for Ankh that very night and ordered him to be released. Although he said it was an order, he was actually begging Ankh to release them first. It wouldn't be too late to deal with them after investigating the matter clearly. What was the point of locking these noble children up in the barracks? Draco reluctantly nodded and agreed to let them go. But he deliberately said, "We can let them go first, but this matter is not over. These people tried to attack General Ah with weapons in the middle of the night. We must investigate and deal with them." The next day, a group of people ran to the city lord's mansion to complain. Naturally, they were accusing Ah of conniving at John's murder and ordering the Legion commander Long Tongue to arrest people in the middle of the night. This group of people suffered a great loss and took the opportunity to put all the blame on Ah. Governor Jehudi-Hotep sent someone to ask Ah to understand the situation, but Ah disappeared again. It was said that the Supreme General had taken a liking to a prostitute last night and brought her out of the city with his guards today. Why would Ah bring Ms. Phi out of the city at this time? Ah did not know that Ankh had caused such a ruckus in Montefiore last night, and he did not expect the Legion commander to cause such a huge ruckus. He had to start from the beginning. John showed off his might and threw Sabaf and his lackeys out of the brothel. He carried the large number of swords he had seized and walked back to the hall. After throwing the weapons on the ground, he ordered the servants to move the broken screen away and replace it with a new one. Only then did he leap over the pool and bow. "My apologies for disturbing the Supreme General's mood." Ah smiled and said, "How can a small fry like you disturb this great general's mood? It's just a small matter. Come, let's continue drinking." The ladies in the brothel had seen their fair share of fights and disturbances, but they had never seen such a scene. John was too brave, and this lad was too arrogant. Lord Sabaf and his guests were just a bunch of thieves, and they did not even have the qualifications to disturb this lad's mood. Who exactly was he? The ladies in the brothel were all good at reading people's expressions. Just now, their faces were pale with fright, but now, they were all beaming with joy. They hugged John coquettishly and raised their cups to toast John. Ms. Phi stood up with a cup full of wine in her hand. Hardadef spoke from the bushes. "General, this little girl offers you a toast. Cheers to your invincible bravery. Your name is John. May I ask which General John you are?" Before Hardadef could answer, the owner of the brothel, Dylan, ordered his men to bring in a new screen that was temporarily moved from another incense hall. He even tore down 2 new ones to replace the broken ones in this incense hall. Dylan stood on the other side of the pool and said in fear and trepidation, "Great General Ah, I did not know that you were coming. Please forgive me. Just now, Lord Ankh passed by and has already arrested all those who offended you. He also asked me to tell you to have a good time. It's rare for you to come back to Montefiore, so please don't be a disappointment." Several girls screamed in surprise and shouted, "Supreme General of the Ah Empire, Atian, is it really you?" Ah smiled. "I am indeed Atian. There's no need to be so surprised, right? This is my personal guard, General John, and he was once the commander of the Legion of Isis. He followed me through life and death battles. I didn't expect that a bunch of thieves would dare to commit violence in front of me." Dylan trembled in fear and hurriedly explained, "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Lord Sabaf and the rest didn't know it was you." Ah's face darkened. "Am I that old? Everyone can leave now, including the band behind. I have something to talk to this lady Ms. Phi alone." John thought that Ah had taken a fancy to Ms. Phi and wanted to do it here, so he did not want anyone to disturb him. He wanted to say something, but he stopped himself and waved his hand. "Did you hear that? The Supreme General has ordered everyone to leave now. No one is to stay here." The owner, the workers, the band, and the dozens of ladies were all chased away. John walked to the screen and was about to stand guard himself when he heard Ah calling out, "John, I didn't ask you to leave, come in." John turned around and went back in, not forgetting to close the new screen. He went around the screen and jumped over the pool, only to see Ms. Fai kneeling in front of Ah and saying, "So you are the Supreme General of the Empire, Ah Tian, you are really blind." John smiled and asked, "I kept calling him Supreme General just now, did you not realize it?" Ms. Fai explained awkwardly. Which guest here doesn't like to flatter each other after drinking? Even a small leader of the city guards likes to be addressed as Supreme General in front of the ladies. I never expected that the person who came today would be the real Supreme General of the Empire. John scratched the back of his head and asked, "Supreme General, if you want to drink alone with Miss Fai, why did you call me in?" I pointed to the cup on the table. "Just now, Miss Fai was toasting you. She hasn't drunk this cup of wine yet." Hardedef chuckled. "I see. The great general always finishes what he starts." He picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp, then said to Miss Fai, "Thank you for your compliment. I'll drink this cup of wine." Miss Fai also picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp. After drinking, John asked again, "Does Supreme General have any other orders? If not, I'll be waiting outside." I pointed to the reclining chair opposite him. "Of course there's something. Sit down first and listen to my questions." John didn't know what I was going to say, so he sat down again. I then asked Miss Fai, who was kneeling in front of him, "Miss, how long have you been here? John is a regular here. Why haven't I seen you before?" He didn't wake her up, so Miss Fai could only answer, "Counting the days, it's been half a year." I then asked, "You are a contract slave, right?" Miss Fai lowered her head. "Yes." A contract slave was different from a normal slave. It was a slave who would become a slave for a certain period of time or under certain conditions because of a certain contract, such as accepting punishment or paying off debts. Such a person might lose their status as a free citizen forever and become a real slave, or they might be redeemed to regain their freedom. The most common was a prisoner of war. After being captured, they would often become a slave of the enemy, but they might also be redeemed or redeemed. I continued to ask unhurriedly, "You are also an advanced warrior, right?" Miss Fai lowered her head even more. "Yes, I can't hide this from Supreme General's eyes. I am a 4th-level warrior." Us next question was strange. "You must have been to Thebes, the capital of Igut, right?" Miss Fai subconsciously replied, "Yes, I have been there before." At this time I smiled. "You can get up now, go and sit beside General John." John was even more puzzled, and he asked nervously, "Supreme General, what do you mean by this? Why don't you let Miss Fai drink with you?" I pointed to Miss Fai and said, "John, haven't you always wanted to know who killed Ladeiros? It's the priest who once impeached you, and also Sabaf's distant cousin. Now the murderer is here, and you have seen her." John jumped up from his seat. "What? She killed Ladeiros? Supreme General, you aren't joking, right?" Miss Fai had just stood up and was about to walk over to John's side when she heard us words. Her face instantly turned pale, and her body started to tremble uncontrollably. Looking at her reaction, it was clear that I was not lying. I picked up his wine cup and took a sip. "John, you don't have to be surprised. Miss, you don't have to be afraid either. Since I asked everyone to leave, I wanted to give you a chance to explain yourself. Why did you kill Ladeiros, and why did you attempt to assassinate Lord Sabaf today? Even if you managed to kill Sabaf in such a situation, you would definitely die. Who gave you the courage to do so, or was someone forcing you?" Miss Fai knelt down again. "Supreme General, no one forced me. This was all my own choice, and no matter the price, I am willing to bear any consequences." John was dumbfounded when he heard this. I was simply too amazing. How did he know that a lady in a brothel was the murderer of Ladeiros after drinking a few cups of wine and meeting Sabaf face to face? The cause and effect were both complicated and simple, because I could sense the true emotions of others. When Sabaf rushed in with his sword, Miss Fai subconsciously reached out to grab the sword. I could clearly sense the rising killing intent in this lady's heart. She wanted to kill Sabaf. This situation was too surprising. A lady who cultivated body arts and became an advanced warrior ended up performing a sword dance in a brothel, and when she saw a noble, she suddenly had a strong killing intent. This killing intent was so strong that it was almost uncontrollable, and it was obvious that there was a deep hatred between them. George had seen the investigation files on Ladera's assassination and told him about it. Ladera's died on the bed in his bedroom, and at that time his undergarments were half undone, and his face was filled with fear and helplessness. He was a priest and had the ability to protect himself. When he was assassinated, there was no movement outside, and it was obvious that he was assassinated at close range. At that time he was undoing his undergarments, and the scene was very thought-provoking. Ladera's was from Montefiore and often hung out with his cousin, Sabaf. Many of the bad things they did were done together, and George had also told A about this. Today, when he found out that Ms. Phi wanted to kill Sabaf, and thinking about the strong dissatisfaction that this lady showed when she first entered, A understood that she wanted to use this opportunity to assassinate Sabaf. When he thought about the situation when Ladera's was assassinated and asked Ms. Phi a few seemingly unrelated questions, A came to a conclusion. However, Ms. Phi did not know about this, and A did not say it in a guessing tone. Instead, he directly told John that she was the murderer of Ladera's, and his tone was unquestionable and unfathomable. He was the supreme general of the empire, so when A said it so directly, Ms. Phi felt like she was struck by lightning. She could no longer hide it, and she did not want to deny it either. Seeing that Ms. Phi actually admitted to it, John stepped forward and asked, "Why? Why did you kill him?" Ms. Phi raised her head, and her face was full of tears. "Supreme General, you have returned with glory, and your name has spread throughout the continent. You are respected by the entire empire. But what about the soldiers who died on the battlefield? They had given up their lives in silence, and their families had to bear the grief and suffering. My brother's name is Mahu, and he once served in your army, but he died on the battlefield." John slapped his head and exclaimed, "What? You are Mahu's sister? I remember him. He was a squad leader in the Inare Legion, and he was very brave in battle. He died while covering the Supreme General's sneak attack on the Hittite defense line, and he was one of the first heroes to die in the Inare Legion." A frowned slightly. "Mahu. I remember this name. He was on the list of rewards that were given to the Empire's military. Girl, get up and sit down to talk." John poured her a glass of wine. "I just don't understand. What does this have to do with you assassinating Ladera's?" Miss Phi's body was still trembling slightly, and John helped her to sit on a chair. He then passed her a glass of wine and listened to her recount a sad and tragic past. Miss Phi was not born into a noble family, but her family was rather well off. Her family owned a farm in the outskirts of Montefiore, and there were many farmers and servants in the farm. Her father, Old Mahu, was a warrior, and he taught his son martial arts from a young age. Ms. Phi also loved martial arts, and she pestered her brother to teach her. Mahu was very fond of this beautiful and lively sister of his, and her martial arts were all taught by her brother. At the mouth of the Nile River, there were many fan-shaped tributaries, forming a large triangular state. This land was flooded during the seasons, and when the flood subsided, it could be used for farming. Mahu's farm was on the east bank of the Nile River, and there was a small tributary that flowed through it. In order to prevent the land from being submerged during the floods, they organized the farmers to build a dam to divert the river, and it took 2 generations and decades before it was completed. The land here could be irrigated throughout the year, and the harvest was twice as high as that of the nearby farms. Downstream of this tributary was the territory of Sabaf's family. He had his eyes on Old Mahu's farm, and he sent his men to buy the land that could be irrigated throughout the year. The price he offered was very low, and Old Mahu naturally rejected him. Later on, he sent his men to cause trouble, saying that the dam upstream had polluted the water source downstream. This was obviously nonsense, and Old Mahu ignored it. Sabaf gathered a group of ruffians and used this as an excuse to cause trouble at the farm, hoping that the farmers would not be able to continue farming, and thus force Old Mahu to sell the land at a low price. At that time, Mahu was at home, and there was a group of strong youths who followed him to train in martial arts, and he taught the ruffians a lesson. Sabaf gritted his teeth in anger, but there was nothing he could do. Later on, Mahu and Sabaf's cousin, Ladera's, were called up to serve in the Arab army. Mahu became a squad leader, and the youths in his hometown also became his soldiers. Ladeiros had been injured by Hardadef during the march, and he had returned to his hometown to recuperate, living in that territory. One day, Ladeiros was strolling by the river, and he saw a beautiful woman working in the fields from afar, and his soul immediately left his body. When he returned and asked around, he found out that the woman was Mahu's wife, and her husband was not to be trifled with. Not long after, the grievous news of Mahu's death came, and the whole family fell into endless sorrow. But to Sabaf and Ladeiros, it was good news. Sabaf had long wanted to teach old Mahu's family a lesson, and Ladeiros had been inciting them with bad ideas. They then hired a group of idle ruffians to cause trouble at the farm, and whenever they saw someone, they would run away. This was repeated several times. The last time, these ruffians ran to the river and attempted to destroy the dam. If they really did that, the years of hard work of the Mahu family would be destroyed. Old Mahu was also a warrior, and he immediately picked up his weapon and rushed over with a few dozen farmers and servants. The problem was no longer simple to cause trouble. Chapter 162. God was also crazy. Old Mahu had gathered people to commit murder, attempted to assassinate Lord Sabaf due to a dispute over the land, and was also suspected of gathering people to commit treason. The evidence was conclusive, and dozens of people at the scene could testify to that. He would be sentenced to death. There were dozens of farmers who were arrested as well. At this time, Ladeiros found Miss Fai's sister-in-law and threatened her to sell the land to him. Otherwise, those who were arrested would be executed. The ending of the incident was tragic. Ladeiros forcibly took Mahu's widow, and Sabaf obtained the land belonging to old Mahu's family. The other farmers who were arrested were eventually released, but old Mahu died in prison. Mahu's widow was wronged and humiliated. She wanted to protect her family, but the outcome was still the same. In a fit of grief and indignation, she drowned herself in the Nile River. Miss Fai was not at home at that time. She had been learning martial arts from her brother since young, and liked to dress up as a man. Because she couldn't believe the news of her brother's death, she went to the Sepet of Cape. She had to find the NRA Legion and meet her brother's comrades. She also wanted to bring back Mahu's ashes and relics. Old Mahu could not stop her, so he let her go and sent 2 servants to accompany her. When Miss Fai returned to the farm, her family was already dead. She could not suppress her grief and wanted to fight the 2 nobles to the death, but she was stopped by the farmers. She could not kill Sabaf and Ladeiros by herself, and if she were to fall into the hands of the 2 brothers, she would not have a good ending either. Moreover, old Mahu's case could not be overturned. Since Sabaf and Mahu framed old Mahu for gathering people to rebel and attempt to assassinate him, Miss Fai made the decision to become a real assassin. Hard work paid off, and Miss Fai followed Ladeiros to Thebes and finally found a chance to kill him. Ladeiros coincidentally met a beautiful lady in a tavern, and this good priest went up to her to flirt with her. In the end, he hooked up with her and died that very night. After killing Ladeiros, Miss Fai returned to Montefiore and tried to find a chance to assassinate Sabaf. However, she found that it was almost impossible to succeed. Whenever Lord Sabaf went out, he would always be escorted by warriors, and the security of his residence was also very tight. Sabaf had done many bad things, and he was worried that someone might seek revenge on him, so he was very vigilant. Especially after Ladeiros was assassinated, the deputy director became even more careful and didn't let strangers get close. At that time, Miss Fai was only a level 3 warrior, and she was, after all, a girl. She could not compare to a real warrior, let alone charge through the defense to kill someone. Miss Fai discovered that there was only one place where Lord Sabaf would not allow his guards to stay by his side, and that was this brothel in Montefiore. The deputy director would visit them once or twice a month, but he rarely came alone. Miss Fai swore before the gods that she would pay any price for revenge, so she gritted her teeth and sold herself to the brothel. It would not be easy to assassinate Sabaf here, as he only came once or twice a month. Perhaps he would be drinking with one of the ladies, and they might not even see each other. Moreover, the clothes that the girls here wore when accompanying guests couldn't really hide anything. Thus, Miss Fai came up with an ingenious idea and performed a sword dance for the guests. In the beginning, The girl naturally could not take out her weapon in front of the guests, so she used a tree branch as a sword. Her dance was very beautiful, but the guests were not satisfied, so she changed to a wooden sword. During this period, Miss Fi even specially learned how to dance in the brothel, and she also asked the guards for advice on swordsmanship. It might be sad to say that Miss Fi advanced from a level 3 warrior to a level 4 warrior in the brothel. At this time, she was already known as the Lady of Montefiore, and she used a real warrior's sword when she sang and danced. The guests, on the other hand, were not surprised at all. The Lady of Montefiore should use a real warrior's sword to perform a sword dance. Before today, Miss Fi had met Sabaf twice, once when he was entertaining an important guest, and the other time when he was accompanying the governor of the city. But Miss Fi did not find a chance to kill him. That was because she was not confident that she could jump across the pool and kill Sabaf. She was not afraid of death, but she was afraid that if she failed, she would not be able to take revenge. But on both occasions, there were guests with a higher status than Sabaf, and the person who stayed her to drink with them was not Sabaf. Today, Sabaf gathered a group of scoundrels to drink and have fun, and he specifically asked Miss Fi to sing and dance. This might have been a good opportunity, but and John just had to spoil it, and Miss Fi was extremely displeased. What happened next was shocking. John broke one of Sabaf's legs and threw him onto the street, and the other guest was the famous Supreme General of the Empire. What was even more shocking was that I exposed her secret with just a few words. In front of these two, Miss Fi could not hide anything, and she told them about the past with tears streaming down her face. John trembled with anger, and the wine cup in his hand was deformed. He gritted his teeth and said, "Supreme General, just sit here, I'll go kill Sabaf now." I was expressionless, but a cold glint flashed in the depths of his eyes, and he said word by word, "If what this lady said is true, of course we can't let Sabaf off. But don't be rash, comfort her first." Miss Fi's words were truthful, and she had even admitted to assassinating Laderos, so there was no need for her to lie. I had been observing John, and he knew that this general had a fiery temper. In the end, he heaved a sigh of relief. Although John was furious, he did not lose his rationality. After Miss Fi finished speaking, I hugged the girl's trembling shoulders and comforted her for a long time. When he raised his head and looked outside, a murderous glint flashed in his eyes. I did not doubt Miss Fi's words, but he could not just rely on one side of the story. He had to investigate on the spot, so he instructed John to do a few things. That night, they brought Miss Fi away and left the city at daybreak. The girls of this brothel were not supposed to go out with their customers, but since the Supreme General wanted a girl from Montefiore to accompany him, the owner of the brothel could not stop Miss Fi from doing so. It was normal for the Supreme General to bring a beauty out with him when he was young. After leaving the city, they followed a tributary of the Nile River and went straight to Old Mahu's farm, which had now become the property of Lord Sabaf. Many of the people involved were farmers there, and he could also find out about the ruffians involved in the assassination. He and John went to investigate and collect evidence. I had gone out with Hardadef to have fun in Memphis, and it would be best if he could create some commotion. After all, getting Hardadef to break Sabaf's leg and throw him onto the streets was something that the Supreme General of the Empire would do. He was young and had made many contributions, so there was no need for him to endure humiliation. Otherwise, he would attract suspicion. It was enough for him to interrupt Sabaf's statement, but he did not expect to run into the matter of Miss Fi. I was not a meddlesome person, but he could not ignore this matter. Otherwise, he would not be able to rest easy. Just for the sake of the soldiers who had followed him and died in battle, he had to get to the bottom of this matter. But the others did not know what I was up to. They only knew that this Supreme General allowed John to injure the deputy head of the city, and ordered Ankh to capture a group of nobles. Just because of a fight in a brothel, he caused such a huge commotion, and then brought a girl out of the city to have fun as if nothing had happened. I had incurred the wrath of the public. I had obtained the glory of the entire country with his military achievements, but he had always been low-key and modest. The officials led by the Prime Minister, as well as some of the nobles who did not participate in the war, were dissatisfied with the new power that I represented. In particular, I himself had risen to fame at such a young age. Although he did not have any foundation in the kingdom of Igut, his contributions were too great, and they had no choice but to reward him heavily. Many commoners who had made contributions in the war were also conferred as new nobles due to their military achievements, forming a new social class. This was also a blow to the original hereditary nobles. John's demotion was a manifestation of the conflict, and in order to maintain the balance in the dark, Pharaoh was happy to watch from the sidelines. After our return to the kingdom, he quietly endured the provocation and impeachment in the face of all kinds of indirect provocations and accusations. The people were already used to this attitude of the supreme general, and some even secretly said that he had ulterior motives. Some thought that this was a good opportunity to suppress him, and that this supreme general might have a guilty conscience or felt that he was in danger. But these people did not understand the real awe. He kept a low profile because he had lost his strength, and he subconsciously avoided many conflicts. Early the next morning, a group of lords went to the governor's mansion to lodge a complaint. Most of them were the relatives and elders of the captured nobles, and some wanted to take the opportunity to teach a lesson. The governor of Montefiore, Jehudi-Hotep, was in a difficult position. He could not afford to offend either side, and the incident seemed to be an accidental drinking incident in a brothel. Ah's hand was a little too heavy, and he advised the lords to keep the peace. But these lords had never suffered such a loss before, and they wanted to take the opportunity to suppress Ah. Jehudi-Hotep could only send someone to invite the supreme general over to explain the situation. In the end, Ah did not take the conflict that night seriously. While Montefiore was in chaos, he still took a girl out to play as if nothing had happened. This attitude completely infuriated the lords who came to lodge a complaint, and they clamored for the culprit to be punished. How to punish him? John had already escorted Ah out of the city. Jehudi-Hotep did not have the guts to arrest him, and there was no reason for him to do so. John broke one of Sabaf's wrists, and Ankh broke the other. These people all pointed their spears at the supreme general, and they only reprimanded Ankh on the surface, but they did not dare to force the governor to arrest Ankh. Ah's position was very high, and he was on the same level as the 3 high priests of the Temple of Isis and Jehudi-Hotep in Montefiore. The only person who could really give him orders was the Holy Lady. Since they could not find Ah, and the governor was not in a position to make a decision, the group of lords went to the Holy Lady to lodge a complaint against Ah. In the meeting hall where the Holy Lady handled official business, everyone was talking for a long time, and it seemed like the crowd was in a frenzy. Maria did not speak until she finally lost her patience. She gave Gabriel a look, and Gabriel shouted, "Lords, you are all nobles with status, how can you make such a mess in the shrine?" Everyone stopped talking, and the Holy Lady then asked, "Jehudi-Hotep, since someone is making a complaint against the Supreme General, have you investigated the matter?" Jehudi-Hotep wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Yes, I have. Lord Sabaf and the people who were arrested, as well as the owner of the brothel and the girls who were present at the scene, have all given their statements, and there are no contradictions or omissions." Maria pointed to the table, "Then show me the records." Jehudi-Hotep presented the documents with both hands, and Gabriel took them and placed them in front of the Holy Lady. Maria did not stretch out her hand, and the documents in front of her flipped by itself. In the blink of an eye, she finished reading them, and looked at the crowd before asking in an amused tone, "Everyone, is it illegal for the Supreme General to drink and relax?" Jehudi-Hotep replied, "Of course not, but," Gabriel interrupted him and shouted, "What buts? Don't be so talkative. Let Lady Holy Lady finish her questions first." Maria then asked unhurriedly, "General Hardadef is offering more than 20 times the reward to a lady to perform a song and dance for the Supreme General. May I ask if this is illegal?" Jehudi-Hotep's face turned cold. "It is not illegal." "Of course, what John did was not illegal." Jehudi-Hotep's face turned cold. "It is not illegal." "Of course, what John did was not illegal." Were they going to sue him for raising the price in the brothel? Someone broke in with a sharp blade, and he attacked the assailant. "Is it illegal?" Everyone in the room became mute, and no one answered for a long time. High Priest Bert coughed and reminded. "But later on, Ankh the supreme warrior. Without waiting for him to finish, Maria interrupted coldly. According to the laws of Igut, those who bring weapons out of the city at night without permission should be arrested and interrogated. Those who gather more than 10 people are suspected of treason and should be dealt with severely. There should be more than 10 of them, so what's wrong with Ankh arresting them? They did not expect the Holy Lady to have no intention of defending them, and even brought out the laws of the city. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. Maria flicked her finger, and the documents on the table flew back into Jehudi-Hotep's arms. She reprimanded. John must have recognized Deputy Administrator Sabaf and realized that it was a misunderstanding. That's why he did not harm anyone else and only chased them away. The Supreme General has already settled the matter. Ankh released all the people he arrested last night. That can be considered as being merciful. What else are you dissatisfied with? This is a small matter that should be dealt with according to the laws of the city, but all of you are making a ruckus in the shrine. As the Holy Lady of the Temple of Isis, I do not deal with the affairs of the city. You are disrespecting the gods by coming here to interrogate me. Since there is a reason for this, I will be lenient. Today, all those who have official titles will be fined a month's salary and sent to the shrine. Everyone, please go back and teach those lawless juniors a lesson, and please reflect on your mistakes. A bunch of people came to the Holy Lady to complain, but in the end, they were rebuffed and even fined a month's salary to go home to reflect on their mistakes. The Holy Lady was indeed the Holy Lady. Her words were reasonable and dignified, so these people could only stand up and admit their bad luck. However, before they could leave, someone rushed over to report that something big had happened. It turned out that Ahmad had returned to the city and sent his personal guards to arrest the people who were released last night and send them to the city's prison. The city's prison did not dare to accept them, but they also did not dare to refuse. All the people were detained in the front hall, and the officials of the city urgently asked Governor Jehudi-Hotep what to do. Ahmad did not even let Lord Sabaf off even though he had 2 broken legs. However, the Supreme General was very merciful and let Lord Sabaf continue to recuperate on the bed. He only ordered his personal guards to tear down 3 walls of his mansion and the walls of his bedroom. Then, they carried Lord Sabaf from his room to the entrance of the prison and threw him onto the streets. Tens of thousands of people watched as Lord Sabaf lay on the ground with 2 broken legs, looking extremely pitiful. The officials who had just been suppressed by the Holy Lady were enraged once again. Ahmad was too outrageous. Just as they were about to explode, someone from the governor's office came to report that Ahmad had brought a group of personal guards to make a ruckus. Governor Jehudi-Hotep, who had just wiped the sweat off his forehead, asked again in a hoarse voice, "Did the Supreme General tear down my office?" If this was any other occasion, everyone would have burst into laughter upon hearing this. When Governor Jehudi-Hotep heard that Ahmad had brought his personal guards to tear down Lord Sabaf's mansion, and when he found out that Ahmad had gone to the governor's office, his first thought was actually this. The messenger replied, "No, the Supreme General came with his sword drawn, and no one dared to stop him. He came to complain and also to denounce Lord Sabaf." He kicked over the table that Lord Sabaf usually uses to deal with official matters, and sat on your chair with his sword, waiting for Lord Sabaf. Everyone in the room was so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. They wanted to take the opportunity to accuse Ahmad, but they did not know what to say. This Supreme General had blown things out of proportion, and it was beyond their imagination. Was he crazy? But when they thought about it, they could not help but shudder. They had once thought that Ahmad was tolerant and low profile, but once the Supreme General turned hostile and drew his sword, who would dare to provoke him? Ahmad was someone who had killed his way through thousands of enemies, and he was not even afraid of Enkidu, the #1 warrior in the continent. Initially, they thought that Ahmad would not cause a ruckus, which was why they came to complain. But now that Ahmad had kicked over the governor's table and destroyed Lord Sabaf's mansion, these people actually hid their heads and waited to watch. If Ahmad caused trouble, there would be Pharaoh and Igut to deal with him. The people in the room would be the ones to suffer if they went to look for trouble. There were also some who were secretly gloating, thinking that Ahmad was asking for trouble this time, and would definitely be punished severely. Let him have his fun first. Governor Jehudi-Hotep felt that his head was about to explode, and he braced himself to ask, who is the Supreme General going to denounce, and what crime is he denouncing? Chapter 163. 147. Conspiracy. Governor Jehudi-Hotep's legs softened, and he almost fell back into his chair. Amon was truly ruthless this time. He had actually accused him of being the mastermind behind the assassination, and even accused all the lords who had complained in the hall. Everyone was shocked and angry, but they all looked at the holy lady with pleading eyes. How would she respond? Maria stood up with a sullen expression and took out her staff. The city's security will be handled by the governor, and will be handled according to the laws of the empire. Isis's blessing ceremony is imminent, so we cannot slack off. Everyone, hurry up and handle your duties. The Temple of Isis also has the responsibility of supervision. Gabriel, Burke, you two will represent the temple and go to the governor's office to listen in. There is no need to interfere with the case. Just make sure it is handled according to the law. After saying this, the holy lady retreated to the back of the hall with her staff. The meaning behind her words was clear. This matter was not under her jurisdiction, but she would send someone to keep an eye on it. Governor Jehudi-Hotep should hurry up and handle this matter. It would be a grave sin if he disturbed Isis's blessing ceremony. Governor Jehudi-Hotep rushed back to the governor's office with a group of people. Amon was sitting in the hall with a sword in his hand. In front of him was a broken table that had been kicked, and its contents were scattered all over the floor. Governor Jehudi-Hotep didn't dare to step forward. Instead, High Priest Burke frowned and asked, Amon, as a Supreme General of the Empire, you should know the rules of etiquette. Why did you rush into the governor's office with a weapon in your hand? Among the 3 high priests of the Temple of Isis, George had the best relationship with Amon. Burke, who did not participate in the war on the front lines, was the representative of the clergy group before the Holy Lady ascended the throne. He was the most hostile to Amon. Maria had sent Burke and Gabriel this time to show that she had no intentions of favoritism. Amon coldly replied, It is His Majesty Pharaoh's permission to carry a sword. Even in His Majesty's carriage, I carry a sword with me, let alone in the governor's office. Everyone was stunned. The general was telling the truth. In order to commend Amon's meritorious service, Lazarus too allowed the general to accompany him with his sword. He could even carry a sword by Pharaoh's side, let alone in the city-state's magistrate's office. Burke's questioning was unreasonable. John held back his laughter and reminded him, Great General, you're here to complain. You should at least give up the seat of the city lord, right? Amon stood up and returned his sword to its sheath. He nodded and said, Thank you for the reminder. I was impolite. Just because of a moment of anger, I even broke the city lord's table. I will definitely compensate you later. Please take a seat, City Lord. After everyone sat down, they began to deal with Amon's accusations. Things had already gotten so out of hand that everyone wanted to back down, especially City Lord Jehudi-Hotep, who wanted to keep the peace. In fact, the truth of the matter was very clear. Everyone's testimony was there, and there were no contradictions or doubts. City Lord Jehudi-Hotep implored, Great General, this is just a misunderstanding caused by jealousy in a brothel. It can't be any clearer. You've already caused such a huge ruckus. You can teach anyone you want a lesson and vent your anger. The ceremony of blessing Goddess Isis is just around the corner, so I think we should just forget about it. You did not suffer any losses anyway. I will get the other lords to apologize to you later. Amon shook his head. We can't do this. It won't be good if word of this gets out. I fought over a girl in a brothel, arrested so many people, and even tore down the magistrate's office. This is too outrageous. How can we keep the peace? I will not use my authority to oppress others. I only request that we deal with them according to the laws of the empire. Let's first convict them. City Lord Jehudi-Hotep asked with a bitter face. How are we going to convict them? Gabriel snorted coldly. How should we convict them? If the Supreme General is guilty, then convict him. The same goes for Sabaf and the others. City Lord Jehudi-Hotep turned to Gabriel and asked, Do you think the Supreme General is guilty? Gabriel replied with a straight face. City Lord Jehudi-Hotep should not be asking me. I am only a supervisor, not a judge. Aman took over the conversation and said, Since that's the case, let's start with me. Lord Jehudi-Hotep, can I go to the brothel to drink and enjoy the music and dance? City Lord Jehudi-Hotep. Yes. Aman. If I sit there, I will only give out more money. Did I offend anyone? City Lord Jehudi-Hotep. No. Aman. If I am not on official business and without permission, should I carry a weapon when I go out at night? Although I have the special permission of the pharaoh, I did not carry a sword in the brothel. City Lord Jehudi-Hotep. You should not. Aman. I was drinking, and someone with a sharp weapon broke into my room. Is that what happened? City Lord Jehudi-Hotep. It is like this. This is all a misunderstanding and has nothing to do with you. It was Sabaf who offended you because of a girl. Aman. I don't want to talk about any misunderstanding with you. If you were sitting there drinking and someone broke in with a sharp weapon, would you say that he was not an assassin? John attacked and ain't caught him. Is there anything wrong with that? City Lord Jehudi-Hotep. Of course there is nothing wrong with that. Lord Sabaf should not have done this, but you can't be so sure that he intentionally tried to assassinate me. Aman. You can't say that. I was not the one who invited him in. Everyone's testimony is clear. Did he point his sword at me and say that I am courting death? I believe that City Lord Jehudi-Hotep should understand what death means. If this is not an assassination, what else can be considered an assassination? Do you want me to be killed by him before the verdict can be reached? City Lord Jehudi-Hotep. Supreme General, please calm down. I have already asked clearly. That bastard Sabaf does not know you. This is all a misunderstanding. Aman snorted coldly. I have publicly attended various official ceremonies in Montefiore, and as the deputy head of the city, he actually said that he does not know me. Do you believe that? Even if he does not know me, is it not my fault that he tried to assassinate me? City Lord Jehudi-Hotep. But why would Sabaf want to assassinate you? That doesn't make sense. Aman laughed. Lord Jehudi-Hotep has already investigated the matter. It was all because of a girl in the brothel who was jealous. Jehudi-Hotep, who was wiping his sweat, finally heaved a sigh of relief. It was just a small matter of a girl in the brothel. Why did Supreme General make such a big deal out of it? Aman's face turned stern again. Small matter? It's true that he was jealous, but the evidence of him trying to assassinate me is irrefutable. How can I not punish him for something as serious as trying to assassinate the Supreme General, just because of a small matter of a girl in the brothel? If the matter gets any bigger, who knows what kind of disaster this person will bring? John, who was standing at the side, finally spoke up. Lord Jehudi-Hotep, I have asked all the questions that need to be asked, and the evidence is conclusive. The deputy head of the finance department of Montefiore, Sabaf, dared to assassinate the Supreme General just because of a girl in the brothel. He is the main culprit, and the other armed assailants are his accomplices. What is your motive for refusing to convict him? Could it be that Sabaf had planned this from the start, or could it be that one of the lords here is the mastermind? Jehudi-Hotep finally could not hold on any longer, and looked around for help. Even though the lords present were all furious when they complained in the morning, they did not say anything now. If Aman were to insist on pursuing the matter according to the law, this would be the result, and it would depend on whether the Supreme General was willing to relent. Jehudi-Hotep cursed them in his heart before standing up helplessly and walking to Aman's side. He whispered into his ear, Supreme General, if you insist on doing this, things will not be easy. Actually, we all know that this is a misunderstanding, and it is right for you to teach them a lesson, but you have to know when to stop. Not to mention, Lord Sabaf is the nephew of the Prime Minister. Aman suddenly raised his voice. What? Prime Minister Joseph? Does this matter have anything to do with the Prime Minister? Please speak louder. I can't hear you clearly. Jehudi-Hotep was shocked, and his face turned red as he quickly stepped back and waved his hands. Supreme General, please don't say anything. I did not say that the Prime Minister is related to this matter. But everyone here knows that Sabaf is the Prime Minister's nephew. I am just reminding you out of goodwill. Aman stood up and pointed at John. Thank you for your kind intentions, Lord Jehudi-Hotep. But does this have anything to do with Sabaf's assassination? Look at this general. He risked his life on the battlefield and was punished for his carelessness. With his uncle as the Prime Minister, do you think he can match up to Lord John's achievements? For example, Sabaf was the Prime Minister's nephew, and it was indeed difficult to deal with him. However, this was a private discussion and could not be brought out in the open. Aman might as well make it clear. Who would dare to say that they could not deal with Sabaf? Even Prime Minister Joseph could not make such a declaration. Unless Jehudi-Hotep openly declared that he wanted to bend the law, there was no room for negotiation. Aman could tell that Jehudi-Hotep was in a difficult position, and he smiled at everyone. So all of you know that Sabaf is the Prime Minister's nephew. In that case, I shall not make things difficult for all of you. Regarding this matter, please send an official letter to the Pharaoh, the Prime Minister, and the military to ask for instructions on how to deal with it. After saying that, Aman took out a scroll of documents and handed it to Jehudi-Hotep. He had already written it before coming here, and the contents were as follows. Blessed by the great god Horus, the protector of Upper and Lower Egypt, the defender of the empire, the successor of the glory of Anare, the supreme general Allahesu Messiah Hovanrayi Montman, whose name is spread far and wide, has recently left his territory for the city of Memphis to participate in the blessing of the goddess Isis. During the banquet in the city, an assassin broke into the city with a sword. After investigation, the main culprit was Sabaf, the deputy head of the city's finance department, and there were dozens of accomplices. The facts of the matter and the records of the interrogation were clear, and the evidence was conclusive. Sabaf was the nephew of Prime Minister Joseph, and there were rumors that the Prime Minister was involved in this matter. The Prime Minister is a role model for the officials, so how could he be involved in this matter? I asked my nephew how to deal with this matter. Ever since I returned to the empire with my army, I have rarely been able to enjoy the pleasures of the countryside. However, there are people who are jealous of the rewards I received from the empire and His Majesty Pharaoh. Someone tried to assassinate me during the banquet. Should I not pursue this matter? I sent my personal guards to apprehend the assassin, but a group of nobles took the opportunity to accuse me of allowing people to commit murder. What is the reason for this? Please advise His Majesty Pharaoh. From Montefiore to Thebes, the capital of the Igut, it would take nearly a month to sail upstream along the Nile River. If one rode a horse along the river bank, it would take at least 5 to 6 days. This was only done for urgent documents. Of course, the fastest speed would be by flying shuttle, which would take 2 days. If one disregarded fatigue and used a flying scroll, the fastest speed would be more than a day. The Supreme General was very anxious. The ceremony of Isis's blessing would be held in 5 days, and this matter had to be settled before the ceremony. This was also an order from the Holy Lady. Thus, Amon's request for instructions was sent to Thebes at the fastest speed possible. Along with the letter was a sword with the family emblem, a detailed record of the investigation of this matter, and another document. Not only did it contain the names of the main culprit and the accomplices, it also included the names of the nobles who had gone to the governor's residence to accuse Amon. The sword belonged to Sabaf, and it was left in the hall where Amon was drinking. The family emblem was on the hilt, and it was the most important piece of evidence. Amon purposely asked the messenger to bring the sword to Prime Minister Yusuf of the empire. Amon's request was not a secret letter, but a public document, which shocked everyone. As soon as the messenger left, everyone knew the result. No one would protect Sabaf anymore, and this deputy director of the finance department would definitely be severely punished, and the people involved would not be able to escape responsibility. The severity of the punishment would depend on Amon, because the Supreme General had already made this matter public, and Pharaoh would definitely give him face. This document was sent to the pharaohs of Igut, Lazith II, Prime Minister Joseph, and the military, which was equivalent to making it public among the ministers of Igut. The Prime Minister was furious, but he could not say anything to Amon. and could only scold his nephew for publicly declaring that Sabaf's actions were a disgrace to the family. Before Pharaoh could say anything, the Prime Minister took the initiative to request Pharaoh to severely punish Sabaf and the people related to him. Such actions did not match their noble status, and it was unforgivable. No matter how many schemes the Prime Minister had done in the dark, this matter had already been laid out on the table, and he had no choice but to do so. Some of the ministers of Igut were on good terms with Aman, while others did not know Aman and were just bystanders. Many of them could not help but admire the Prime Minister, and thought that he had offended the wrong person. Aman was a supreme general who had fought with real swords and spears, and he would not play tricks with the Prime Minister. This was a slap to the face from Montefiore all the way back to Thebes. Many people thought that the Supreme General Aman wanted to punish Sabaf, because the Prime Minister had secretly encouraged his henchmen to impeach John, which was actually a slap to Aman's face. Since the Prime Minister wanted to punish John, Aman wanted to punish his nephew, Sabaf. While Prime Minister Joseph put on a pained expression in front of the ministers, Pharaoh Lazith too laughed when he saw Aman's document. He smiled and said, "Don't be sad, Prime Minister. It's normal for there to be a few scum in such a large family. I'm very pleased with your attitude, and this matter must be pursued strictly. Sabaf is the main culprit, and according to the law, he should be punished severely. As for the others, I think it's a misunderstanding, and no one is targeting the Supreme General. It's understandable that the Supreme General is angry. This document has impeached all of them, and they have to be dealt with. Sabaf will be demoted to a commoner, and will no longer be a member of the Prime Minister's noble family. If Supreme General Aman wants to punish them further, as long as it doesn't violate the law, he will do as he pleases. As for the others involved, those who had weapons in their hands will be demoted by 1 rank or fined. Those who gathered to falsely accuse the Supreme General will have to pay a fine to apologize to the Supreme General. As for the exact amount, it will depend on whether the Supreme General is satisfied with it. The city of Montefiore will be responsible for it. Pharaoh's order was to punish Sabaf severely, and the rest of the accomplices would be given a lighter sentence. Lazith too could see that Sabaf's accomplices did not know anything at the time, and it was just a common case of brawling and carrying weapons in the middle of the night, which was against the law of the city. But due to Ink's timely handling of the matter, there were no serious consequences. If they were to be treated as assassinations, it would implicate too many people. As for those who went to the governor's office and the shrine to complain, Pharaoh reprimanded them, and the punishment was very interesting. They were asked to pay a large sum of money to the Supreme General as an apology. Anyway, it was a generous reward, and Pharaoh did not have to pay out of his own pocket, which was enough to give Aman face. Pharaoh also praised John and Ink in the order, praising them for their loyalty. Although it was only a verbal praise, and there was no actual reward, it meant that not only did they break Sabaf's legs for nothing, but they also did a good job and deserved it. As the Supreme General of the Empire, Aman had contributed greatly to the empire, and the more they feared him, the more they had to give him face on the surface. Pharaoh heaved a sigh of relief when the Supreme General went to a brothel to cause trouble, and even ordered his personal guards to injure the officials of the city. If Aman knew how to endure at such a young age, and never made any mistakes, then that would be truly terrifying. The messenger was extremely fast, and the city of Montefiore received Pharaoh's order 3 days later, as well as a message from the Prime Minister demanding that the culprits be punished. All the culprits were already in prison, and Jehudi-Hotep did not dare to delay any further. He immediately invited Aman to the governor's office, and brought all the relevant personnel over to be dealt with on the spot. According to the Igut decrees, if a noble committed a crime, unless it was treason, they could be punished with their titles depending on the severity of the crime. Sabaf was dismissed, stripped of all his titles, stripped of his noble status, and demoted to a commoner. This was a rather heavy punishment. Speaking of which, it was just a case of drawing a sword in a fit of anger, but the poor bastard did not expect to cause such a huge commotion. Pharaoh's order also specifically mentioned that if Aman felt that he was not satisfied, as long as he did not violate the empire's decrees, he could add to the punishment. Governor Jehudi-Hotep immediately asked. Supreme General, do you want to add to the punishment? Aman replied in a deep voice. Since he has been demoted to a commoner, I just want to give him a chance to redeem himself by sending Sabaf to the NRA Legion to guard the borders. Then, I will assign him to the unit that corresponds to his birthplace. Governor, does this violate the Empire's decrees? Governor Jehudi-Hotep nodded. Of course not. I think he should be thanking Supreme General. Chapter 164. Translator, Exodus Tales Editor. Exodus Tales. After the main culprit was dealt with, Governor Jehudi-Hotep asked, Supreme General, His Majesty has decreed that they should be demoted by 1 rank or fined accordingly. What do you think? Aman spread his hands and said, I have no objections. Let them make their own choice. Governor Jehudi-Hotep smiled bitterly. Thank you for your leniency, Supreme General. As for those who accused you due to a misunderstanding, His Majesty has ordered them to compensate with a large sum of money. How much do you think is appropriate? Aman smiled. I don't want to extort anyone. As for the specific amount, I will leave it to you. I won't complain about too much or too little. Thank you for your hard work. This sum of money will be divided into 3 portions. I will take 1 portion, and the other 2 will be given to John and Ink. This is my gratitude as well as a reward from His Majesty Pharaoh. Lazith too only praised the 2 generals with his mouth, but not with any tangible benefits. Aman, however, turned the sum of money into 3 and rewarded Ink and John handsomely. Governor Jehudi-Hotep let out a long sigh and said, This matter is finally settled. The day after tomorrow is Isis's blessing ceremony. It has finally been completed. Gabriel, who was listening by the side, spoke up. Lady Holy Maiden has ordered that after this matter is settled, everyone involved is to gather at the temple for a meeting. She wants to ask about the results. Aman stood up as if he wanted to say something, but after hearing Gabriel's words he hesitated. He winked at John and followed everyone to the temple to pay his respects to Lady Holy Maiden. In the noisy meeting hall, Lady Holy Maiden inquired about His Majesty Pharaoh's decree and Governor Jehudi-Hotep's actions. She nodded her head in satisfaction and consoled Aman. She praised Jehudi-Hotep and expressed her sympathy for his hard work over the past few days. Finally, she spoke to Aman. Supreme General, it is rare for you to come to Montefiore, yet you encountered such a situation. Please do not take it to heart. The day after tomorrow is Isis's blessing ceremony. This will be the 2nd time you are participating in this ceremony. 2 years ago, you were an honorary knight of the temple. Today, you have become a Supreme General. How do you feel about revisiting an old place? Aman bowed and said, This is all thanks to Lady Holy Maiden's guidance, and also thanks to Sir Gabriel for saving my life in the past. Otherwise, how could Aman be where he is today? I have a request, and I hope the Holy Queen will grant it. Maria asked, What request does the Supreme General have? Aman, in this ceremony, I want to wear the armor of an honorable warrior, still hold the spear like back then, stand in the position of the past, guard the square for the Holy Queen, and do my part for the city of Montefiore. Everyone was shocked. The general did not want to sit on the viewing platform in front of the Divine Hall to participate in the ceremony. Instead, he stood on duty in the square with a spear in his hand, just like the warrior of the Divine Hall 2 years ago, guarding the square to maintain the order of the people. By doing so, Aman was giving face to the temple of Isis and Montefiore. Someone was about to dissuade him, but Maria smiled and said, All right, I promise you. The Supreme General does not forget his roots and is respected by the whole country. He is humble and does not become arrogant because of his achievements. He is worthy of respect. Everyone reacted upon hearing this, and expressed their admiration towards Aman. Aman smiled and said, Lady Holy Maiden, there is actually one more thing that I wanted to talk about in the governor's office, but since there is an opportunity here, let's talk about it here. A noble general wants to sue the commoner Sabaf. Governor Jehudi-Hotep was taken aback and quickly said, Supreme General, isn't this matter already settled? Aman said lightly, The matter of Sabaf's assassination is settled, But this is another matter. It is not me who wants to sue him. It is General John who wants to sue him. The complaint has already been written, and as for what exactly is going on, you can take a look at it first. Should we talk about it here, or back to the governor's office? Maria frowned slightly. Why does General John want to sue Sabaf? Let me take a look at the complaint first. John took out a scroll from his bosom, and Gabriel took it and passed it to the holy maiden. Maria flipped through it, and her brows gradually furrowed. She said with a sullen expression, "Pass it to everyone." The Holy Queen actually wanted all the officials present to read it. Everyone took it and passed it around. Their faces became very ugly. Some people even showed relieved expressions. This was a complaint by John against Sabaf, accusing him of sending ruffians to cause trouble at the farm after Mahu's death. He seized Mahu's farm, and his accomplice Laderos forcibly took Mahu's wife. Mahu's father died in prison, and his wife committed suicide by jumping into a river. Mahu was once a squad leader under John, and today he wanted to seek justice for his subordinates and the soldiers who sacrificed their lives at the front lines. Amon made a big deal out of a small incident in the brothel. At first, people thought that the Supreme General was fighting over a girl, but when they saw that the situation was not right, they thought that Amon was taking the opportunity to show his power and retaliate against the Prime Minister. Only now did they realize that Amon did not let Sabaf off because he wanted to avenge the soldiers who died at the front lines. If this matter were to be spread out, not only would it not damage Amon's reputation, it would also increase his prestige. The matter was still the same, but the meaning had changed. When everyone finished reading, Maria sighed softly. "General John, your investigation is very detailed, and the facts are clear. The suffering of Mahu's family is pitiful, but according to the laws of the city, this case will not be overturned." The Holy Envy was telling the truth. This case could not be overturned because the most crucial evidence was missing. Laderos was the one who planned this incident, and he was the one who bought the farm from Mahu's widow at a low price. He was also the one who coerced Mahu's widow into marrying him, but Laderos was already dead, and Mahu's widow committed suicide. As for Sabaf's assassination, the facts were clear. Old Mahu had indeed gathered a group of people with weapons and barged into Sabaf's territory. They rushed to the carriage of Sabaf and Laderos and stabbed Sabaf's horse. Unless they could find out who planned this and find the culprit who stabbed the horse to confess that it was all Sabaf's doing, they would not be able to overturn the case. Unfortunately, John could not find any evidence. Some of the hooligans had long disappeared, and this incident was planned by Laderos, so there was no evidence left. Old Mahu did not have the intention to assassinate Sabaf, just like how Sabaf did not have the intention to assassinate Amon. But in the face of evidence and facts, the case could only be decided this way. Of course, Amon was clear about this, otherwise he would not have waited until now to bring out the complaint. He got up and bowed. "Holy Envy, you are right. But I do not ask for results, I only ask for an open investigation. According to the laws of the Empire of Igut, if a noble accuses a commoner, the city's Justice Department must accept the case and conduct an open trial, allowing the commoners to sit in." His goal was not to overturn the case, but to make it public. Amon accused Sabaf of assassinating Sabaf to ruin his reputation, and now he wanted John to accuse Sabaf and conduct an open trial to ruin Sabaf's reputation. Making this matter public was also beneficial to Amon and John. At the very least, people would know why the Supreme General wanted to create such a ruckus in Montefiore. Maria asked curiously, "Supreme General, you and General John have been in the territory all this time. How did you find out about this matter? And when did you go to the farm to investigate?" Amon answered honestly. "On the second day after John injured Sabaf, everyone thought that I had brought the girl out of the city to play. In fact, the girl was Mahu's sister. Mahu was a hero who died on the battlefield, but his family was destroyed, and his only surviving relative ended up in that kind of place. How could I not investigate this? John and I brought Mahu's sister to the farm to investigate this matter." Amon was not a fool, and he did not mention the matter of Miss Fai assassinating Laderos, but revealed the girl's identity. Governor Jehudi Hotep held the complaint and said with a bitter expression, Supreme General, Sabaf's legs were broken, and he was sent to serve in the NRA Legion according to your wishes. You have already punished him. Besides, Lady Holy Queen has also said that this case cannot be overturned. The day after tomorrow is the blessing ceremony of Isis, so can we not complicate matters? Aman, who was kneeling on the ground, stood up and asked with his hands behind his back. My lords, so you have not forgotten that the day after tomorrow is the blessing ceremony of Isis. I would like to ask, what is a blessing? What is a blessing? No one dared to answer without permission, so they all looked up at the Holy Queen. Maria stared at Aman blankly for a moment, just like when they stared into each other's eyes. Then she slowly replied. In the blessing of Isis, the blessing of Isis is performed to eliminate pain, wash away fatigue, and give people confidence, strength, and courage. It is a symbol of the goddess' love and mercy. But a true blessing is not just a ceremony. When one's heart is filled with power, the goddess will not close her eyes to her people. She will bear witness to sin and kindness, and let love and honesty meet, and justice and peace meet. The fertility of the earth will accompany the peace of the soul, washing away the unclean soul. It is a blessing, but it is also a test, and that is the true blessing. Supreme General's reminder is right. If we delay today's accusation because of the blessing ceremony, how can we talk about blessing? Governor, accept the case according to the rules, and conduct a public trial today. Do not change the way this case should be handled because of the blessing ceremony. If the trial cannot be completed by tomorrow, continue after the blessing ceremony, and make an announcement according to General Aman's wishes. The matter was decided. On the day before the blessing ceremony of Isis, the city's Justice Department accepted the case of John's accusation against Sabaf, and made an announcement that the citizens of the city were allowed to attend the trial. Of course, the trial required a process, and it would take more than a day or two to bring the relevant people to the government for interrogation. The results would only be out after the blessing ceremony. The announcement was made, and the contents of John's accusation were made public, but the trial did not actually proceed. That was because on that night Sabaf, who had lost all his standing and reputation, committed suicide. His death was not surprising, and Aman had long expected this outcome. Sabaf had already been stripped of his noble status, and became a commoner. Once his crimes were made public, sending him to serve in the NRA Legion would only result in a worse death. How Sabaf died was no longer important. When John presented the accusation in public, his fate was already decided. When Maria gave the order, the matter was settled, and the lords took their leave. However, the Holy Maiden asked Aman to stay, as she had something to ask the Supreme General in private, and sent everyone else away. After the blessing ceremony, Aman would return to his territory, and the two of them did not know when they would have the opportunity to meet again. Maria sat there and looked at Aman, as if there were thousands of words in her eyes. Aman also looked at her, and after a long time, the sky outside the window gradually darkened, and it was time for the Supreme General to take his leave. Aman then said softly, "Don't you have something to ask me? I can see that you have something to say, speak." Maria's words startled Aman. The girl who sang and danced for you that night was the one who killed Lederos, wasn't she? Aman was slightly startled, and then sighed. Nothing can be hidden from your eyes. I did not mention this at all, but you thought of it. Yes, she killed Lederos. Madame Holy Envy wouldn't punish this poor girl, right? There is no evidence in this case. Maria said meaningfully. If I wanted to pursue the matter, I would not have mentioned it to you alone. Aman, that girl is known as the Flower of Montefiore. She must be very beautiful, right? This was the first time Aman spoke in front of Maria, and he actually stuttered a little. She is very beautiful, I can't deny that. But I think that true beauty is bathed in the light of goddess Isis. There was a smile in Maria's eyes, but there was also a trace of undetectable regret. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "You have to be kind to her, her experience is very pitiful, and her behavior is also very admirable. She is a rare woman. Perhaps God sent her to your side. This is the true fate of the world." Aman smiled. It's really the gods who sent her to my side. I just had to meet her, and so many things have happened. Maria lowered her eyes, but she could still feel that there was something wrong with Amon's eyes. She raised her head and asked, "Why are you looking at me like that? What a strange smile. Am I wrong? You've alarmed the entire empire for a girl. What will happen to that orphan girl? Shouldn't you treat her well in the future? My Supreme General." Amon was still smiling. "Since the Holy Queen said so, of course I have to treat this girl well. I will ransom her and arrange everything." Maria frowned slightly. "This is what you should do. Why are you still smiling like this?" Amon finally laughed out loud. "This girl is called Miss Phi, a 4th-level warrior. If the Supreme Warrior Gabriel saw her, he would definitely like her very much. It is not easy for a girl to have such an achievement. You are one of the people I admire the most. Nothing can be hidden from your eyes, but there is something so obvious that you did not see." Maria asked curiously, "What is it? I don't understand what you mean." Amon replied, "I didn't say, and you have never seen her before, but you guessed that she is the murderer of Laderos. But General John likes her very much. Such an obvious thing, and you actually did not see it. I will ask Ms. Phi for her opinion, and if she is willing, then let them be together." Maria's expression was actually a little embarrassed. "Oh, so that's what happened. The person who went to the farm to investigate was John, and the person who filed the official complaint was also John." When he mentioned that girl, General John's expression was indeed, "I should have seen it, but I just didn't pay attention. You are very considerate for your subordinates and people, but you should also think more about yourself." Amon stopped smiling and said, "When it is time to think, I will think about it. You also have to take care of yourself." The next day, Amon sent someone to the brothel to redeem Miss Phi. The Supreme General placed great importance on this matter, and the person he sent was the captain of his guards, the Supreme Warrior General John. Unexpectedly, someone reacted faster than Hardadef. When Hardadef arrived, there were already 3 groups of people rushing to the brothel to ransom Miss Phi, and all of them had powerful backgrounds. They were the governor of the city, Jehudi Hotep, the emissary sent by Ankh, the chief warrior of the Shrine of Light, and the rich merchant Sahather himself, an official in charge of the resources department. The owner of the brothel, Dylan, was frightened by this situation. Originally, he could have agreed to redeem Miss Phi, but if he agreed to any one of them, he would definitely offend the other 2. When John arrived, Sayo was still arguing with the other 2. He was very determined to redeem Miss Phi no matter how high the price was. Hardadef was also taken aback by the scene, but this general was not stupid. He immediately understood what was going on when he saw Sahather and asked, "Lord Sahather, are you here to redeem Miss Phi because you want to do Supreme General a favor?" Sayo saw John and came over to greet him warmly. Upon hearing the question, he quickly replied, "Yes, I intend to send Miss Phi to the Supreme General's residence." John turned to the other 2 and said, "Go back and ask Mayor Jiatujin and Lord Ankh if they want to redeem Miss Phi. Do they also want to send her to the Supreme General? If that's the case, there's no need for that. Help me thank the 2 lords for their good intentions. The Supreme General has sent me to redeem Miss Phi." So that's the case. This time, there was nothing more to argue about, and the 2 messengers left. Sayo grabbed John's hand and asked, "The Supreme General sent you to redeem Miss Phi. I can't come here for nothing. You must give me some face. I will pay for the ransom. Use my carriage to send Miss Phi to the Supreme General's residence." John laughed. "There's no need for the carriage. Miss Phi is in the Supreme General's residence. I'm just here to greet her. As for the money," the owner of the brothel, Dylan, quickly interrupted, "Miss Phi doesn't owe us money." John turned his head and glared at him. "You're the one who said that Miss Phi doesn't owe us money. Don't say that I used the Supreme General's authority to oppress her." Dylan nodded. "Of course she doesn't owe us money. She has earned quite a lot of money for us in the past half a year. My lord said that if the Supreme General comes to redeem Miss Phi, it should be the money that Miss Phi earned. We have to return it to her." Dylan was only the owner of this brothel, and this brothel was the property of a great noble in Montefiore, which was also the my lord that Dylan mentioned. John came to redeem Miss Phi, but all he did was to greet her, And not only did he not spend any money, he even took away a large sum of money. Sayo still refused to leave and said to John, "Let me send you back, I'll hold the horse for you." John was both annoyed and amused. "I walked here." Chapter 165. 149. Horus with the broken wing. The two of them had a close relationship. Back then, John was the frontline commander of the NRA Legion, while Sayo was the logistics officer. They could be considered comrades who had fought on the front lines together. John had no choice but to bring Sayo back to pay his respects to the Supreme General. When Amon saw Sayo, he was overjoyed and laughed. "Why have you put on weight again? You can't live like a prince all day, you have to exercise and work hard. Back then, you were a very diligent merchant. If you didn't personally cross the desert to collect debts, we wouldn't have known each other." Sayo bowed and said, "Because I worked day and night during the war, I was so tired that I was tanned and skinny. When I came back, my family was very sad to see me and advised me to rest well. In the end, I overnourished myself and became even fatter than before." John kicked him lightly. "You call that working day and night?" Amon then asked John, "How's the matter going?" John replied, "It's done." Amon nodded. "Go and invite Ms. Phi here, I have something to say." Ms. Phi came to the front hall and knelt to Amon as soon as she entered. "Supreme General, I don't know how to express my gratitude. You and General John not only punished the sinners, but also made the matter public. This is a wish that I swore in front of the gods to fulfill at the cost of my life. It seems like the legends are true. You have received the blessings of the gods and have the glory of the gods in the world." Amon hurriedly gestured for John to help her up inside. "Miss, your words make me very ashamed. Mahu was a brave warrior who fought with me. He gave up his life on the battlefield, but we couldn't protect his family. By the time we found out about it, it was too late. If you must thank someone, thank General John. He was the one who went to the farm to investigate, and he was also the one who filed the official complaint to the city." Ms. Phi was about to kneel down to John again. John was holding on to her elbow. He hurriedly stopped her, looking like he was going to hug her. His face was a little red. Seeing this, Amon asked again, Ms. Phi, John has redeemed your slave contract today, and your revenge has been avenged. What are your plans from now on?" Tears welled up in Ms. Phi's eyes. "I thought that my fate was to perish together with Sabaf, but not only did the Supreme General take revenge, he also allowed me to live. My life is yours. Even if I become your slave for the rest of my life, I'm afraid I won't be able to repay you." Amon waved his hand. "Don't say that. You didn't do anything wrong. You don't deserve such a tragedy. Since that's the case, I have something to ask you in private. The rest of you can leave now." John was still in a daze. Sayo grabbed his arm and pulled him out, winking and smiling. They waited outside, and after a while Ms. Phi came out. Her eyes were red, and so was her face. She looked down at John and said, "The Supreme General invites you in to speak in private." After a while Hardadef came out. He lowered his head and peeked at Ms. Phi with a silly grin on his face. Sayo asked in bewilderment, "General John, what are you smiling about? I've never seen you like this before. Is there something good?" John continued to smile and did not answer. Amon walked out and said, "Of course there's something good. After so many days of trouble, there's finally something good. Lord Sayo is also here. Let's have a feast tonight and have a drink. Tomorrow, we'll go to the blessing ceremony of Isis." The annual blessing ceremony of the goddess of Isis had finally arrived, and this year's ceremony was particularly lively. People from all the nearby cities came to attend, and just a few days before the ceremony, Supreme General Amon had caused a ruckus in Memphis, which became the talk of the town during their leisure time. There were hundreds of thousands of people gathered in the huge square, but under the command of the warriors, they were orderly and there was no pushing or shoving. When the ceremony began, no matter where they stood, the holy light that descended from the sky would fall on everyone. With a spear in hand and armor, Amon stood in the crowd at the edge of the square like an ordinary guard, in charge of maintaining order in this area. The surrounding people all looked at the high platform in front of the shrine in the distance, not knowing that the person standing next to them was the famous Amon. The warriors in bright armor formed a semicircle in front of the long steps of the shrine. In the middle of the formation was the high platform where the Holy Queen held the ceremony. Behind the high platform was a large magic formation formed by the priests. The noble lords were watching the ceremony from the long steps. Maria, wearing a golden crown and holding a staff, climbed the high platform. The bell in the shrine rang, and everyone knelt down towards the high platform. Amon also knelt down and put his spear on the ground beside his hand. The Supreme General did not bow his head to kiss the ground, but looked up at the Holy Queen. Maria slowly raised her staff and glanced at the people in the square. She seemed to see everyone clearly, but one of them was fixed on a pair of eyes at the edge of the square in the distance. She showed a shallow smile, then slightly closed her eyes and began to sing. Amon did not know what Maria was singing. At this moment, the Holy Queen was in the center of a powerful magic formation. Amon's detection magic could not detect it, but he could feel it in his heart. The god's tear on the staff emitted a faint golden light. This golden light was getting stronger and stronger, but it was not dazzling. It spread to the surroundings and the sky. The magic formation began to operate. The golden light converged in the air and turned into a bright beam of light that shot towards the sky. The whole sky was golden. The light disappeared. The sky of Montefiore seemed to have been golden since ancient times. With the melodious sound of the bell, there was a white light like a veil, like a waterfall, like flying snow, like a drop of rain, like a fluttering feather, silently sprinkling down. This was the blessing of Isis. Hundreds of thousands of people in the square felt its magical comfort, including Amon. Everyone bowed their heads and prayed devoutly. Only Amon looked up at Maria. She stood in the middle of the crowd, exuding a holy light. Amon did not pray, nor did he think of anything. He just looked at her. The light sprinkled on his body, as if accompanied by a soft singing, just like Maria's answer to the question, "What is a blessing in the shrine?" When the heart has the power to yearn for, the gods will not close their eyes to their people. They will bear witness to sin and kindness. They will let love and honesty meet, and justice and peace meet. The fertility of the earth will accompany the peace of the heart of the gods, washing away the unclean soul. It is a gift, but also a test. This is the true blessing. If the so-called gods were really like what Maria said, then Amon would use the most devout oath to offer his body and mind. That was Maria's God, the God she believed in. Under the comfort of this light, amidst the crowd, Amon felt very weak, like a newborn baby who had nothing but a brand new life and future. This weakness was not weakness, but the germination of pure and exuberant vitality. Amon had forgotten whether he had lost his power or not. He didn't think about it at all. He just felt the call of this magic like a newborn. He was the only one in the square who did not pray, and he was the one who was the most focused on this ceremony. There was an assassin at the blessing ceremony the year before last, and there was a war with 2 kingdoms last year. Would there be an accident at this year's ceremony? Many people secretly raised their vigilance. Just as the ceremony reached its climax, the 9th-level Supreme Mage Hotep, who was in charge of monitoring the whole scene, suddenly frowned, because he heard the rumbling of thunder. Amon, who was in a state of ecstasy at the edge of the square, suddenly woke up. He also heard the thunder. The rolling thunder did not come from the sky, but from the depths of the earth in the east, accompanied by a slight tremor. The whole city was shaking, but the ordinary people were not yet aware of it. What was going on? Without time to think, Amon used his magic to cast spatial magic in an instant, trying to stabilize the ground under his feet as much as possible. His magic spread out, and then he felt the convergence of several other powerful magical forces. It was Vord and the other supreme mages who had taken the same measures. The strongest force that stabilized the ground was, of course, from the magic formation behind the high platform. The main function of this magic formation was to assist the Holy Maiden in completing the ceremony, and ensure that it would not be disturbed by any accidents. The people in the square neither heard the muffled sound like rolling thunder under the ground, nor did they feel the slight tremor of the earth. They were still immersed in the light of the blessing of Isis. But Amon and the other supreme mages felt completely different. The magnitude of the tremor of the earth was slight, but the force was so huge that it was almost irresistible. So many people cast spatial magic at the same time, but they could only barely stabilize the central area of the city of Montefiore with the square as the center. They felt the impact of the magic power was so violent that although their bodies did not move, they felt like small boats being tossed around in a gale. The horror in their hearts could be imagined. The tremor of the earth did not last long, and it stopped before the end of the blessing ceremony. Amon finally breathed a sigh of relief. In the legends of the continent, the tremor of the earth was the wrath of the gods against the sins of the world. But when he felt the tremor of the earth during the blessing ceremony of Isis, he thought of such a legend and felt that it was absurd. Amon gently wiped the fine beads of sweat from his forehead, but his movements suddenly stopped. He realized one thing: his magic power had been restored. If not, how could he have cast spatial magic just now? It was restored without him realizing it at all. Amon did not even think about it when he cast the magic. Had he completely passed the test and achieved the 8th level of the power of two sides? Amon moved his body and suddenly realized something else. He had not fully recovered his strength. The magic power of the magic power had indeed been restored, and it was far stronger than before, but the power of the blood in his body was still the same as yesterday. It had not recovered or grown. His current situation was similar to that of an ordinary 8th level supreme mage. Amon closed his eyes and carefully felt his condition. Suddenly he smiled again. The power of the blood in his body could be said to have recovered, but it could also be said to have not recovered. It still needed a process of growth, like a baby slowly becoming strong. It was no longer clear whether it was the power of magic or the power of body arts. The power of two sides had finally merged into a true one, as if he had been reborn. Maria on the high platform, of course, also felt the tremor of the earth, but she continued to complete the ceremony without making a sound. Her calmness and composure were even better than when she was assassinated. After the blessing ceremony, the crowd sang poems in praise of the goddess Isis. Maria walked down the high platform and led the priests and officials into the shrine to offer sacrifices to the goddess. The ceremony was successfully completed. However, all the supreme mages present had an ominous premonition that something big must have happened in the distance. That night, Maria sent messengers to all the cities overnight to ask if there were any unusual changes. The next day, all the important officials in Montefiore were summoned to the shrine. Amon did not immediately return to his territory, but stayed in Montefiore to wait for news. Something big had really happened, something earth-shattering, and 3 of them happened at the same time. The tremor occurred in the Cape States, and the exact source was the Kenmet defense line where Amon had fought against the Uruk Legion. The entire lower Igut felt the tremor, but it did not cause too many casualties. According to the memory of a soldier on duty at the east gate of Kenmet, it was a sunny day, but the sky suddenly darkened. Looking up, there were no dark clouds, only a dark sky. It was not like at night where the stars and moon could be seen. All the residents of Kenmet came out of their houses, and the soldiers in the barracks also came out of their tents. The hearts of the people were shrouded by a huge unknown fear, and they gathered in the square in the center of the town to pray to the gods. Just as the people looked up at the dark sky, all kinds of lights appeared in the sky, like huge, colorful flames shining and circling, accompanied by the sound of impact, rumbling, and thunderous explosions. Then the earth began to tremble, and 3 of the 4 towers of Kenmet collapsed in the violent tremor, and more than half of the houses were destroyed. Fortunately, the people had gathered in the square because of the strange phenomenon in the sky. According to the memory of a boatman who was a few dozen miles north of Kenmet, he was repairing a damaged boat on the beach when he suddenly felt the sky darken. The blue sea churned even though there was no wind, reflecting the dark sky with a dark red color. There was a strong flash of light in the sky, and in the distant sky, balls of light exploded like fireworks. Then the earth began to tremble violently, as if the rocks underground had turned into monsters, colliding and biting each other. The sea suddenly receded, revealing a large area of the seabed, leaving behind many stranded fish and prawns. The boatman ran towards the higher part of the shore, and along the way, he stumbled and tripped countless times. He felt the earth moving, and looked back in horror. He was so frightened that his body went limp, and he sat on the hillside, unable to run anymore. The receding sea roared and formed a high wall, sweeping away the boats on the beach. Not far away, the shore was torn apart by an unimaginable force, and the sea flowed into the depths of the land through the crack. It was as if a giant blade had chopped down on the land, forcefully cleaving out a gap. The land moved horizontally along the Kenmit defensive line that Amon had laid out, and the sea flowed in from the north, forming a crevasse-like bay, shaped like a dagger cutting into the land. The sea swallowed up the battlefield where Amon and the Uruk Legion once fought, passing through the east of Kenmit and nearly 4/5 of the land, leaving only a narrow passage at the southernmost end. A new narrow inland sea was formed in the territory of the Sepet of Cape. When the sky cleared up again, the sea under the sunlight had a reddish hue, as if it was suffused with a faint bloody glow. Therefore, this narrow inland sea was later called the Scarlet Sea. The main city of the Cape States was 160 kilometers away from the source of the earthquake. It was the nearest large city, and the tremors were the most intense. Many deep cracks appeared on the sturdy city walls, and many houses in the city suffered varying degrees of damage. There were hundreds of casualties. However, the most serious accident occurred in the temple. The sturdy temple building was not damaged, but the statue of Horus that was enshrined in the center of the temple had its right wing broken. The huge stone statue fell from a high place and broke into many pieces. The priests panicked. If the tremors were too strong, the entire temple and the surrounding buildings would collapse, and the statue would inevitably be damaged. However, the temple and the surrounding buildings were all intact, and only the most important statue of Horus had one of its wings broken. This was a sign of disaster, and the consequences could be very serious. The statue in the main temple of the city was not an ordinary object. From the extraction of the stone, to the chiseling, transportation, and carving of the statue, the entire process was strictly supervised, and the names of all the participating craftsmen were recorded in a book. This huge statue had a history of 100 years, and it was majestic and sturdy without a single crack. How could it suddenly have one of its wings broken? According to the rules, the responsible craftsman would receive the most severe punishment, but the craftsman from 100 years ago could no longer be held accountable. City Lord Roddick organized people to investigate the disaster, and at the same time he sent people to Montefiore and Igut to send urgent reports while waiting anxiously. The news from all over the country quickly came back, and Roddick was both frightened and slightly relieved at the same time. The same thing happened to the Temple of Horus in all the cities of Igut. The body of the man, the head of the divine eagle, and the statue of Horus with its huge cloak-like wings were all destroyed, and the right wing was broken and smashed into the altar. This could only mean one thing: the destruction of the statue had nothing to do with the craftsman who built it, and it was not just the fault of the Cape States. But the same thing happened to the statues in the Temple of Horus in all the cities of the country. Only some small private temples had the statues of the king of the empire still intact. What did this mean? It made people not dare to think about it, and it made all the people of Igut shudder. The earthquake formed a long and narrow inland sea in the territory of the Cape States. The goddess Murin once told Amon that this was the boundary of the realm of the Ennead of Igut. The wings of the statues of Horus in the temples of the cities of the country were broken and damaged. Even the distant capital city of Thebes, which had no earthquake, was no exception. According to the legends since ancient times, this probably not only symbolized the anger of the gods, but also the fall or injury of the gods. Pharaoh, who claimed to be the incarnation of Horus on earth, should be the most frightened, but he had to stand up to appease the people in order to maintain his theocratic status. But Lazarus too did not need to worry anymore. The third major event that happened at the same time was the sudden death of the pharaohs of Igut. Chapter 166. 150 Moses' Run. Lazarus' death happened in this context. Everyone kept the cause of his death a secret, and it even became a historical mystery. In later myths, legends, and discussions among the people, Some said that Lazarus too died of a palace murder. Others said that the pharaoh died of the wrath of the gods, and most people said that he died with the destruction of the statue of Horus, because he claimed to be the incarnation of Horus on earth. These three major events happened on the same day. The entire empire of Igut seemed to be shrouded in an invisible dark cloud. From the nobles to the commoners, everyone was in a state of anxiety. It was the same for the capital of Igut, Montefiore. When Lady Saint Envy relayed the urgent reports from all over the temple to everyone, only heavy and nervous breathing could be heard. People were guessing various possibilities in their minds, but they didn't dare and couldn't speak their real thoughts. After a long while, the Supreme General Amon broke the silence and asked, "Did the messenger from the capital mention anything about the new pharaoh's succession?" The Holy Envy replied, "His Majesty's son Ramses III succeeded the throne, and the new pharaoh renamed himself Merneptah. His Majesty of New Merneptah has decreed that the officials and servants of the various cities are to stay in their stations, and are not allowed to go out without permission. They have to appease the people in the territory, and wait for the latest decree and oracle." It was not surprising that the new pharaoh would ask the local officials to appease the people after he succeeded the throne. With such a major event happening, it was necessary to calm the panic of the people in the name of the oracle. It was a wise move for the new pharaoh to wait for the latest oracle everywhere. But the name Ramses III gave himself was meaningful. Merneptah meant, the light of Ra, the guardian of Seth. The new pharaoh brought out Ra, the oldest of the Ennead, the father of the gods, and Seth, the legendary uncle of Horus. In the ancient myth of Igut, when Osiris established the empire of Igut, his brother Seth was the guardian of the royal power. It was understandable that the name pharaoh carried such a suffix, but the intention of not mentioning Horus in the name of Ra was intriguing. Amon stopped talking and thought of many things. Could it be that something had happened to the god Horus? He had read the ancient texts hidden in the temple of Isis, which were said to have not been read for 200 years. There were 2 poems in them about the story of Isis and Ra, and Horus and Seth. Legend had it that Isis had relied on wisdom and means to subdue the ancient father of the gods, Ra, and gained his power and status. In the other poem, the king of the gods became Osiris, the husband of Isis, and Osiris was also the first pharaoh who established the empire of Igut, but his brother Seth killed him and seized the throne. Later, Horus defeated Seth with the help of Isis and became the king of Igut. In other words, there had been conflicts between the Ennead of Igut. Some of the gods had retired, and the vast empire of Igut had become the domain of Horus. Montefiore, which had the largest population and the richest land in Igut, was the domain of the goddess Isis, and the underworld, the home of souls, was the domain of Osiris. The rest of the gods were subordinate or attached to them. If something happened to Horus, whether he fell or was injured, the other side of the Ennead who had been defeated was likely to make a comeback. Amon did not know much about the divine domain, but he could still piece together a lot of important information from the words of the goddess Murin. When Murin was disguised as a personal guard to rescue Amon on the battlefield, she once said, "Kenmit and the mountains on both sides are the border of the domain of the Ennead of Igut, and it's not easy for me to enter. I've been careful enough, I hope I didn't alarm them." Later, Horus appeared in the sky in the form of a huge cloud eagle, and Murin said angrily, "Because I appeared in the war." So Horus used this as an excuse to perform a miracle in an attempt to change the outcome of this war on earth with his divine power. "But I did it to protect you, and I did not invade the domain of the Ennead." What Horus did, although did not violate the agreement of the gods, was contemptible, and also exposed his weakness and fear. It seemed that there was some kind of agreement between the gods, and there was also some kind of agreement between different divine clans, and when this agreement was broken, it could lead to conflict. Although Enkidu was dead, he had killed the cloud eagle that appeared in the sky with an earth-shattering sword, and this battle was probably the fuse of a new conflict. Enkidu's sword was tantamount to a declaration that Horus was not as powerful as imagined, and his appearance on the battlefield had aroused the anger of the goddess Murin, which meant that the war was not only between mortals, but also between the gods. Amon speculated that it was likely that the gods of the Anunnaki divine clan had attacked the Ennead, and the main god of the Ennead, Horus, had fallen or been seriously injured in this conflict. The appearance of the Red Sea and the broken wings of the statues of Horus in the shrines of the various cities may all have something to do with this. Then the defeated party in the Ennead divine clan was likely to regain the position of the main god. And the name of the new pharaoh implied this. Pharaoh's violent death was probably also related to this. And as for how Lazarus II died, Amon had no way of knowing the inside story. Lazarus II's death was so sudden that it was not a good thing for Amon either, and it meant that his recent efforts to wreak havoc in Montefiore were likely to be in vain. Everything that Amon had done was largely for Lazarus II to see, and now that a new king had succeeded the throne, the situation was still unknown. If what Amon had guessed was true, and there had been a conflict and a change in status between the Ennead of Igut, it might not be beneficial to Amon himself. Don't forget the title that Lazarus II had given him. The blessing of the great god Horus, the guardian of Igut, the guardian of the empire, the inheritor of the glory of Anare, and the supreme general whose name was praised by all the kingdoms. The first title of this title was the blessing of the great god Horus, and the soldiers and people believed that Horus had been inspired by Amon to appear, which was why Amon received such a noble title. There was another title after that, inheritor of the glory of Anare, just because Amon was the commander of the Anare Legion at the time, and the soldiers even referred to the Anare Legion as the Legion of Amon. Amon had sent Madanzo and Link back to his territory, and instructed Moses to take the Supreme General's warrant to the plains of Duk. But something like this suddenly happened. If they had not set off earlier, they would not have been able to leave by now. And if they had set off, they would not have been able to pass through the checkpoints of the various cities and borders, unless they did not take the official roads. Since Amon had sent Madanzo and Link to follow them in secret, presumably these two disciples would be able to understand the changes in the situation in time and guide Moses and the others to take a detour. Amon did not send anyone to chase Moses and the others back. His thoughts were clear. Moses and the others should leave if they could. Madanzo and Link should have the ability to guide them around all obstacles. If they were stopped, they would be sent back to the territory. Since the Supreme General's warrant was issued before the death of Lazarus II, it was not a mistake that no one was sent to retrieve it. But Amon himself had to return to his territory immediately according to the orders of the new pharaoh, and wait for a new edict and a new oracle. As the Supreme General of the Empire, at such a sensitive time, any unusual movements of his might cause suspicion from all sides. So he immediately set off with John and Mizphi, and before leaving, he only had time to bid farewell to Maria in the shrine in front of everyone. Amon had a lot of worries in his heart, but he could not say them out loud. He also saw the worry in Maria's eyes. Maria was the guardian of the Ennead of Isis. If something really happened to the Ennead of Igut, the impact on the holy maiden of the Temple of Isis would be unpredictable. Amon had too many secrets that he had buried deep in his heart, but at this moment, he finally could not hold it in. Before he left, he sent John to find Gabriel and deliver a secret letter, and told Gabriel to personally deliver it to the Holy Maiden. In the letter, he mentioned his understanding of the divine realm, and the relationship between the gods and some of his conjectures. He also reminded Maria to read an ancient book, which was the volume of poems written by the ancient bard that he had read. With Maria's intelligence, she should know what to do. As for what might happen and what preparations should be made, it was already beyond Amon's control. The death of Lazarus II naturally required a state funeral, and the whole country mourned. And the ascension of the new pharaoh, according to the usual practice, was to be pardoned in the country and the whole country to celebrate. It was hard to tell whether this was a happy or sad event. On the first day Amon returned to his territory, the first thing he waited for was not an order from the new pharaoh, but a visit from the commander of Mount Horeb, Pyra. Amon was very surprised and asked him, "Lord Pyra, did you not receive the latest order from the capital? Why did you leave Mount Horeb at this time to come here?" Pyra had a bitter face, and in a pleading tone he said, "Supreme General, I came here because of the order from the pharaoh. I want to borrow people from the Supreme General." Amon frowned. "Did the pharaoh order you to borrow people?" "Borrow who?" Pyra explained. It was not the pharaoh who ordered me to borrow people, but I had to borrow people from the supreme general because of the order from the pharaoh. On the first day after His Majesty Merneptah succeeded the throne, he sent someone to Mount Horeb to order that all the parangons produced should be sent to the capital according to the year of production, and that all the skilled craftsmen should be transferred to Hillmore, saying that he wanted to build a new capital around the shrine of Ra. Since you took away the Duk miners, the production of parangons in Mount Horeb has dropped by nearly 40%, and there are a large number of mined or cores piled up there waiting to be extracted. But the mages can't complete these tasks at all. And now the pharaoh has transferred a large number of craftsmen away, urging them to send the parangons directly to the capital according to the original production. I really can't do anything, so I want to borrow your slaves to help. Amon shook his head gently and said, "They are my people, and it was not easy for me to take them away from Mount Horeb. How can I send them back? I know that your situation is really difficult, but I can't help you." Poira stepped forward and said, "I don't want the Supreme General to send them back to Mount Horeb. I just want to ask the Supreme General for help. I can send someone to deliver the mined or cores, and then transport the extracted parangons back. They are your slaves, and I can't ask you to help me for free. According to the old rules of Duk, for every 10 parangons mined, one of them will be paid to the Supreme General." This was a very attractive condition, but Amon's brows furrowed even more tightly. Didn't Pharaoh transfer a large number of craftsmen away? Even if my people can extract the parangons for you, you don't have enough people to mine the ore cores in the mines. Poira shook his head and said, "The pharaoh transferred away all the craftsmen who were mining the ores. Most of the craftsmen who were mining the ores are still in Mount Horeb. I will ask for help from the city and recruit a group of people urgently. The only problem is that the last step of extracting the parangons from the ores is the Supreme General." Amon smiled bitterly. "Unfortunately, you are too late. His Majesty Pharaoh once gave me a territory in the plains of Duk, but I need to send my own people to occupy and reclaim it. I have already sent a group of slaves there, and I'm afraid they are already here. According to the latest order, they are to stay in the territory and not go out. Even if they can rush back, they will be too far away to put out a nearby fire. But since Lord Poira has asked me for help, I can't let you come here in vain. I will write a letter to the Temple of Isis to inform them of your difficulties, and ask them to send a group of mages to support Mount Horeb." Poira left in disappointment. Whether Amon was telling the truth or not, he had no right to order the Supreme General to do anything. But at least the trip was not completely in vain. At least Amon promised to write a letter to the Temple of Isis for help. After seeing Poira off, Amon felt that things were not going well, and fell into deep thought. There were two most important parangons in Igut. One was Hillmore in Upper Igut, and the other was Mount Horeb in Lower Igut. Hillmore was not as desolate as Mount Horeb. It was located about 600 miles north of Montefiore, at the confluence of the upper reaches of the Nile River with a tributary. Although the vicinity was mountainous, there was a large area of land that could be reclaimed in the valley, so Pharaoh Merneptah wanted to build the Temple of Ra and a new capital there. This move also meant that the old structure would be changed, and Ra was likely to replace Horus's position in the Empire of Igut. If Pharaoh then ordered the construction of the Temple of Ra in various cities, then Amon's guess would be confirmed. Who would become the king of the Ennead had nothing to do with Amon. He was only worried about two things. One was how Maria's identity would change subtly and what kind of changes she would encounter. And the other was the fate of the Dushians. According to the tradition of the Empire of Igut, every pharaoh had to build a mausoleum for himself from the moment he succeeded the throne. This was a huge project, and Merneptah had to build a new capital and a main shrine for Ra at the same time. This not only required a lot of wealth, but also required the assembly of craftsmen from all over the country. Where were the best craftsmen on the continent? It was the Duk clansmen. If Pharaoh Merneptah ordered them to be conscripted, even if they had already reached the plains of Duk, Amon would have to call them back, and it would not be as simple as dealing with Poira. Moses and the others were the slaves of Supreme General Amon, equivalent to his private property, and Pharaoh could not deprive them at will, but he could requisition them. With the identity of slaves, they were like goods that could be borrowed and returned. If these people were borrowed by the pharaoh to build a shrine or a capital, when would they be able to return? Especially for work like building a mausoleum, the most talented craftsmen were often the most difficult to return, and if they could not return, it would be reasonable and legal for Pharaoh to compensate Amun with a new batch of slaves. But what Amun wanted was not slaves. If that was the case, where would he find the people of Duk? Amun immediately called John over and gave him a lot of instructions. He also gave the last wind-riding shuttle and a spatial artifact to John, and ordered him to find Madanzo and Link immediately. He said apologetically, "My personal guard captain, I'm afraid you are the happiest person in Igut these few days. Although so many things have happened, it has nothing to do with you. Just accompany Ms. Phi and be happy. I'm sorry to disturb your happiness, but the matter is very urgent. You must leave secretly and don't be discovered. Go quickly and come back quickly." John hurriedly bowed and said, "Ammonius, why do you speak to me like this? Your will is an order. I will say goodbye to Ms. Phi and leave." The new pharaoh Merneptah had specifically ordered that the officials of the territories were not allowed to go out without permission, so it was naturally inconvenient for John to leave the territory. Amun gave him a wind-riding shuttle. As a supreme warrior, he could control a shuttle because he trained in the power of two sides. Amun was very rich now, but precious artifacts were not so easy to obtain. Currently, he only had 3 spatial artifacts: the magical bone, the ventussum crafted by Crazy Ol, and a spatial bracelet crafted by Link using the ventussum. Link gave the bracelet to Amun as a gift. He was especially good at crafting all kinds of artifacts, and Crazy Ol was once the best master craftsman on the continent. Amun also passed on all the teachings he had received from Nietzsche to him. Now that something unexpected had happened, Amun sent John to order Madanzo to give the ventussum to Moses, and embed it in the iron staff to carry the necessary supplies. He also gave the spatial bracelet to Madanzo and Link. Amun originally had a crystal shuttle and 2 wind-riding shuttles, but the crystal shuttle and the wind-riding shuttle had already been given to Madanzo. Now the last wind-riding shuttle was given to John, who no longer had a flying artifact. But Amun already had an 8th level achievement, and could fly instantaneously. The shadow-chasing lamp, the magic mirror of puppets, and the 2 sets of scorpion shell armor and snake scale armor that Link had repaired were all given to Madanzo. This showed how much importance Amun placed on this matter. After John set off, Amun also began to pack his things. Of course, he had to keep the large number of special parangons from Murin's treasure. The most precious artifacts in his hands included the god's tear, Gilgamesh's divine bow, Humbaba's 4 fangs and a snake's tendon, the whip that Enril gave him when he was a shepherd, and so on. Chapter 167. After packing up, Amun went to the temple of Batet in the manor. After tidying up, Amun went to the shrine of Batet in the manor. So many things had happened, and he had guessed all kinds of possibilities in his mind. He wanted to find the cat that was once a god and ask it, hoping that Schrödinger could say something this time. Schrödinger's position in Amun's territory was absolutely transcendent. Everyone knew that the Supreme General doted on it. Amun had once put the king of Hittite aside, and let the cat eat and drink first. Now the cat could even jump on the altar and swagger around to enjoy the offerings. The people of Igut loved cats, and the Supreme General was even more of an Igut than the people of Igut. Amun didn't know where Schrödinger went to play all day. If he wanted to find it, he could wait in the temple. No matter how long he waited, he would not be impatient. Some time ago, Amun went to Montefiore to attend the ceremony. Schrödinger stayed comfortably in the territory and didn't go with him. He hadn't seen it for a few days and missed the cat. Amun waited from noon until dusk. He didn't even eat dinner, and told the servants not to disturb him. When the sky was completely dark, Schrödinger was seen strolling over the threshold of the temple. Amun went up to him and smiled. "I've been waiting for you for a long time. Why are you only now back? Don't go out to play and delay your meal. The roasted fish is cold." Schrödinger squatted by the threshold and twisted his neck. The voice in Amun's mind was a little unhappy. Why is it roasted and not roasted fish? Aman apologized. I was in a hurry and didn't have time to catch fish in the river. It's a little cold. I'll roast it again. Schrödinger asked. You had time to wait for me all afternoon, but you didn't have time to catch a fish? You came back yesterday, but you didn't come to me until today. Was the cat acting coquettishly or angry? Aman smiled apologetically and said, Many things have happened recently. Yesterday, I just came back from Mount Horeb, and Poira came looking for me. Then I sent John to look for Madanzo and Link. There are still many things to deal with, and I just finished this morning. There's something I want to ask you, but I don't know when you'll be back, so I've been waiting here. If I find out next time, I'll go catch some fish first before looking for you. Schrödinger snorted. Oh, so the Supreme General has something to do. Otherwise, why would he think of me, the cat? Aman still smiled and said, Didn't I come to you when I was free? Who was the one who built this temple? Now that the wings of the statues of Horus in the main shrines of the cities of Igut have been broken and damaged, of course I have to ask you for advice. Schrödinger suddenly sighed. I know all this. Aman, I want to ask you, is it worth it to pay so much just for a promise? If you continue like this, I don't know how much more you will have to pay. She was, of course, referring to the efforts that Aman had made in order to let his people return to their homeland. Aman was just the son of an old drunkard in Duk, and he was exiled to the mountains. Moses and the others did not owe him much. Up to this point, Aman had already done too much, and no one could say that he owed anything. Aman smiled and said, This is not only my promise to Goddess Murin, but also to Mayor Dusty in the underworld. If I can't even keep a promise, how can I achieve what I have today? I did pay a lot, but I also got everything I deserve. Schrödinger nodded silently and asked again. Some people in the world often do things because they have paid too much and can't give up. Aman, don't tell me you also have this idea of self-restraint? In the eyes of the gods, time is like the flowing Nile River. People live in the present, where everything they have paid has been paid. They only need to think about how much more they have to pay and what they can get. This is true wisdom. Aman shook his head and said, I am not a god, at least not now. I have never thought about what you said. I am just keeping my promise, and I have my own gains. Schrödinger finally smiled. You are indeed my Aman. Only such a heart can help me unlock the seal. I don't know how long it will take you and how much effort you will put in. What do you want from me? Just say it. The cat stood up and walked to Aman's feet, rubbing against him intimately. Aman squatted down and sat on the ground. He stroked the cat's back and said, The first is good news. I have passed the test, regained my strength, and have achieved the 8th level. Schrödinger was surprised and happy. Really? Tell me about your situation. Aman told him how he felt. Schrödinger said, Congratulations, you have indeed passed the test, but there is still a process to achieve the 8th level. The path to the gods is different from other cultivation methods in the human world. The real difference begins now. You have gone through 2 tests at the same time. First, you have not lost yourself after losing your power. Second, you have been reborn and your understanding of power has changed. You can slowly experience the second test. When you really achieve the 8th level of the so-called power of 2 sides, you can try to help me unlock the seal. I am glad that the first thing you talk about is not the gods, but me. Aman then asked, The wings of the statues of Horus in the main shrines of the cities all over the country have been broken. What does this mean? Schrödinger's tone was indistinguishable from joy or sorrow. The wings of the divine eagle symbolize the protection of Igut. Someone has torn off its wings, which, of course, means that Horus has lost his position as the king of the gods in the Ennead. I don't know what happened to him, but in short, he has become a loser. Aman asked again. Igut has changed the name of the new pharaoh to Merneptah, and is going to build a shrine and a new capital for Nra. What does this mean? Schrödinger thought for a moment before replying. On the surface, Nra has become the king of gods again, but I think Seth should be the real winner. In the name of Nra, he has retaken the divine realm. As for what exactly is going on, I don't know. Aman. Even you don't know? Schrödinger smiled bitterly. I have been imprisoned for 100 years, and I don't know much about recent events between the gods. Amon. Then you should know what happened back then. Igut is the most powerful empire on the continent, and Horus, who owns this divine realm, should also be the most powerful god. Who could defeat him? Schrödinger snorted coldly. Horus is not the most powerful god in Igut. There is no place for him among the Ennead. If he had not become the king of the gods and enjoyed such a vast divine realm, Horus would probably not be a match for any of the Ennead. Amon frowned. Then how could he have become the king of gods? Schrödinger sighed. It's because of Isis. She and Anare are the two most powerful gods among the Ennead, and it is said that Isis defeated Anare. Amon. Then why didn't Isis become the king of gods? Schrödinger narrowed his eyes, as if caught up in his memories. That was a long time ago, thousands of years before I entered the Ennead. I can't know the specific situation. I've never even met Anare, and only vaguely heard the gods mention that Anare may not have really lost to Isis, he just gave up. Amon's eyes also narrowed. Gave up? Schrödinger nodded. Yes, he gave up the divine realm that absorbs divine power, and gave up his position as the king of gods. The gods do not do inexplicable things. It is said that this giving up is also a kind of detachment, the pursuit of another realm, and being defeated by Isis is also an opportunity for enlightenment. These are just rumors among the gods. I don't know if they are true or false, and they are beyond my understanding. Amon smiled bitterly. If even you can't understand, then I'm afraid it doesn't make much sense for me to ask these questions now. Schrödinger. Yes, it doesn't make sense for you to talk about these things when you're not in that position. I don't know how Isis defeated Anare, but one thing is clear to all the gods. There was an agreement between Anare and Isis that Isis herself could not become the god of the gods. But Isis was very clever, and she made her husband Osiris the king of the Ennead. Apart from Isis and Anare, the god who contributed the most to the development of the divine realm was Seth. Seth, of course, refused to accept it, so he defeated Osiris and seized the throne, and Isis helped Horus defeat Seth, and that was the so-called king of Igut in later generations. Amon blinked and said, "Oh, so that's what happened." It seems that Isis is very trustworthy, helping her husband and son become the king of the divine realm, and she herself has always kept the agreement with Anare. Schrödinger. There are no gods in this world who do not keep their promises, otherwise they would not have become gods. Amon frowned. But this still doesn't explain my doubts. Since Isis is so powerful, and Horus has been the king of the Ennead for thousands of years, how could such a change happen today? Schrödinger. Horus has the status of the king of gods. Of course he is more powerful, and with the support of Isis, other gods cannot shake him. My guess is the same as yours. Enkidu's sword on the battlefield let people see that Horus is not as powerful as they thought. Maybe because he took the initiative to appear on the battlefield and violated the agreement between the divine clans, he was attacked by the Anunnaki divine clan, and was either injured or killed, and Seth took the opportunity to defeat him. Amon shook his head and said, "But I still don't understand. Since Horus could not have achieved the position of the king of gods with his own strength, and all this was because of the help of Isis, then didn't Isis help him again?" Schrödinger was silent and lowered his head for a long time. Amon waited for a long time before asking, "What's wrong with you? What are you thinking about?" The cat sighed. "I have been imprisoned for too long and missed too many things. I'm afraid that Isis is no longer here. I should have thought of this long ago. Otherwise, how could Bear steal the rib of Osiris from the shrine? And how could he leave Montefiore with the guardian goddess? If Isis was still here, these things would not have happened." Amon was shocked. "What? Isis is no longer here? What does this mean? Has she fallen?" Schrödinger was silent again, as if lost in deep thought. The cat frowned and replied after a while, "It may be that she has fallen, or it may be something else. The magic of Isis is beyond my understanding. Now that I think about it, when Bear entered the shrine, Isis should have been gone. As for where she went, I can't answer." Amon's tone was a little incredulous. "It has been 36 years since Bear stole the rib and took away the guardian goddess. According to your guess, Isis was already gone at that time. Why did this happen only today? Schrödinger sighed again and again. 36 years may be a long time for mortals, but it is very short for the gods. Although Isis is no longer here, Horus has the status of the king of gods and a vast divine realm, which adds to his power, and the gods do not know how powerful he is. He may have been injured in the battle with the Anunnaki, giving Seth the opportunity to challenge him. Without the protection of Isis, Horus, who has lost his position as king of gods, would never have had a chance to take it back. Amon asked another question that was very interesting. I know that the relationship between the gods is not the kinship that people understand. So is Horus really the son of Isis? The ancient book you showed me described a very bizarre story. Is it true that Isis became pregnant next to the body of Osiris and gave birth to Horus? Schrödinger smiled. You have to join a certain divine clan to fully understand the relationship between the gods. But Horus should be the son of Isis. When he first appeared, the gods once suspected that Horus was the reincarnation of Osiris, but later it became clear that he was not. Osiris did not leave, and he is still the god of the underworld of the Ennead. It is said that Horus was the son of Isis before she became a god. He had been hiding on earth, and it was Isis who guided him to become a real god. It was only after Seth defeated Osiris that Horus officially appeared. It was rare that Schrödinger was willing to speak so much today, as if he wanted to pour out all the past. Amon took the opportunity to ask, I have never understood a few questions. What is a divine realm, and what is a divine clan? Schrödinger turned his head to look at him and said, According to your so-called power of two sides, you can only fully understand this after achieving the 9th level. But before that, you have to help me unlock the seal, so I will try to explain it clearly. The so-called divine clan was an ancient system of relationships. The earliest gods mastered the secret of becoming a god, which was the language mentioned in the ancient poems. They would guide some people on this path, and these people may be liked by the gods, or may be chosen by the gods, including the relatives and friends of the gods, and also those who were strong in the mortal world. This was similar to a teacher-student relationship, but not entirely so. The gods of the previous generation were the guides, and only those who received guidance were eligible to join a certain divine clan, and abide by the rules of this divine clan, thus becoming a group of gods. The Ennead and the Anunnaki divine clans were formed in this way. Knowing how to become a god did not mean that one could become a god. For example, the power of two sides that Amon practiced was not something that everyone could master. And even if they did, it was difficult to pass various tests, and most people could not reach the end. The gods would not guide and teach for no reason. Instead, they would only choose those who were most likely to succeed. As for the divine realm, there were two meanings. One was a kingdom where people who believed in a certain divine clan lived, and such a kingdom was often created by the gods. For example, Osiris and Seth created the empire of Igut. The other meaning was difficult for mortals to understand, and it was also known as the realm of the source of divine power. It was difficult to clearly describe this concept in words, and usually it was where the shrine of a certain god was located, where the god received the offerings and prayers of his people. There might be many gods worshipped in a temple, but the gods had to attach their consciousness and thoughts to the statues. Only then would the statues symbolize the true gods. When each statue was completed, the priests needed to hold a ceremony to pray and offer sacrifices, asking for the gods' blessing. Amon had experienced this firsthand in many shrines, and the gazes of the gods were invisible, as if they could hear the hearts of people praying. Because of this, Amon forbade his disciples from praying to other gods. On the other hand, it was only through such a ceremony that the gods could turn the statue into an attached embodiment of their consciousness and mind. And the cold stone statue also seemed to have a strange life. The divine realm had an exclusive quality, and if a god also wanted to attach his consciousness and mind to his own statue, he must obtain the consent of the main god of the divine clan, which was also one of the agreements between the gods. This was divided into two situations. One was to enjoy the sacrifices of people in the same shrine, and become a sub-god beside the main god. The other was to open up a separate small divine realm in the vast divine realm. This second situation was equivalent to the Shrine of Murin in Duk, or the Temple of Isis in Montefiore. The main god of the Ennead was Horus, and because of the special status of the goddess Isis, the city of Montefiore, which had the largest population and the most abundant resources in the lower Igut, had always been the realm of Isis. The situation of Murin was completely different from that of Isis. Duk was the battlefield of the ancient gods, a land abandoned and cursed by the gods. When the Anunnaki divine clan split, according to the agreement, it was included in the scope of Enlil's divine realm, but in fact, it did not become a real divine realm. Without people who believed in and sacrificed to the gods, there was no divine realm to speak of. The vicinity of Duk was barren and not suitable for people to live and reproduce at all. Later, the goddess Murin asked Enlil to establish her own divine realm in the land of Marduk, and Enlil agreed and made a certain agreement with the goddess Murin. The agreement between the gods was confidential, and only they knew about it, and Schrödinger could not know the specific content. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.